They flicker first in the dark, silhouettes of wings moving against firelight, scales glinting gold and red as though the world itself were remembering something. In the caverns of cinema and imagination, dragons have never really left us. They coil and breathe and rise again in the shimmering depths of our screens. Smaug curling around his stolen hoard beneath the lonely mountain, Drogon screaming above the ruined streets of King's Landing, Toothless gliding across a violet sky beside his human companion. These are our dragons, rendered in pixels and light, but their shadows stretch far beyond the reach of modern storytelling. They are older than film, older than language. And if you trace their outlines carefully enough, you begin to see that they were never just monsters, never just symbols. They were mirrors of power, of creation, of everything we feared and everything we longed to be. Why do these creatures live everywhere, in every time? Why does a culture half a world away from another draw the same curved shapes, the same serpentine bodies, the same impossible fire behind the eyes? From the mountains of China to the fjords of Scandinavia, from the temples of Mesoamerica to the manuscripts of medieval Europe, dragons emerge like a shared dream, an unspoken memory passed through the veins of civilization. Some are divine, bearers of rain and fortune. Others are apocalyptic, destroyers of worlds, and yet they belong to the same family of myth, as though humanity, scattered and alone beneath the stars, looked up and imagined the same thing. A creature too vast to belong to the earth, a being that could only have been born from our need to understand power itself. To follow them, we must travel backward, farther than history remembers, to the moment when humanity first began to tell stories. Picture a dawn not marked by clocks or calendars, but by the slow lift of mist over the mouth of a cave. Inside, on the wall, a shape begins to form, lines carved in ochre and charcoal, suggesting a creature that could be both serpent and storm. Perhaps it was inspired by the fossils that early humans stumbled upon. Massive bones half buried in the soil, ribs and skulls of creatures long extinct. To a mind without the concept of deep time, what could these bones be but proof of dragons? In China, where rivers curl like sleeping dragons across the land, the oldest stories tell of Long, the dragon that commands rain, that lives in lakes and clouds, that brings life to the soil. Unlike the Western beast, this dragon is benevolent, divine. It has no wings, yet it flies through the heavens, a symbol not of destruction, but of balance. The Chinese emperor once claimed descent from the dragon, his robes embroidered with its coiling form, its pearl grasped between clawed hands. To be the dragon's son was to rule with the mandate of heaven itself, and across millennia, that vision never faltered. Even today, in the festivals that light up modern cities, paper dragons ripple above the crowds, their bodies flowing like rivers of flame, ancient symbols animated by new hands. Further west, in the humid forests and high temples of Mesoamerica, the feathered serpent ruled the sky. Quetzalcoatl, the god who was both bird and snake, embodied wisdom and creation. His feathers shimmered with the colors of the Quetzal bird, his coils stretching across the horizon. When the Spanish conquistadors arrived, they mistook the stories of this deity for omens of their own arrival, as though one myth had collided violently with another. Yet beneath that misunderstanding lies something older, the same human impulse to imagine the sky alive with serpents, to see the divine in the dance of scales and feathers. In Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization, another dragon stirred, the chaos serpent Tiamat, whose body gave birth to the world itself. When the god Marduk slew her, he split her carcass to form the heavens and the earth. From destruction, creation. From chaos, order. The dragon was not only the monster to be slain, but the mother of all things. It is one of humanity's earliest recorded myths, carved in cuneiform, thousands of years before Homer's heroes ever set sail. And in that story, as in so many others, the dragon stands at the boundary between what is known and what is feared, the eternal threshold of myth. As civilization grew, dragons multiplied. In India, the serpent Vritra held back the rains until Indra struck him down with lightning, freeing the waters and renewing the earth. In Egypt, Apep, the great serpent of chaos, battled the sun god Ra each night as he journeyed through the underworld. In Greece, Python guarded the Oracle of Delphi until Apollo's arrow found its mark. Always the same theme, a hero and a monster, a god and a dragon. Locked in a cycle of conflict that defines the world. Yet even in defeat, the dragon is never truly gone. It dissolves into the landscape, into the clouds and rivers, into the whispers of the wind. It becomes part of the natural order it once threatened to destroy. If you were to map them all, the dragons of the East and West, of myth and scripture, you would find they orbit a shared center. The dragon is the embodiment of contradiction, life and death, wisdom and danger, the earth and the sky. It is the shape of our paradoxes made flesh. Perhaps that is why it endures, because we too are creatures of contradiction, drawn to what terrifies us, revering what we must also destroy. In Europe, as Christianity spread, dragons began to change. Once symbols of chaos in the wild, they became icons of evil, manifestations of the devil himself. In illuminated manuscripts, saints and knights slew them in acts of divine justice, their spears piercing the coiled body of sin. Saint George stands triumphant over his dragon in 1,000 paintings, his white horse rearing against a backdrop of flame. The story became a parable of faith overcoming darkness, of man taming the wild world. But the dragon, in dying, became something greater. It became necessary. Without the monster, there is no hero. Without the shadow, there can be no light. And so, while the Western dragon fell under the sword, in the East it continued to soar. The Chinese, Japanese, and Korean dragons grew ever more celestial, symbols of imperial power and cosmic balance. They brought rain, guarded temples, and curled around the corners of roofs to ward off evil. In Japan, Ryujin ruled the seas from his palace of coral and pearl, while in Korea, Yongwang, the Dragon King, governed the waters with majesty and might. In every culture touched by the idea of the dragon, water and power are intertwined. The storm, the flood, the tide, all forces beyond human control. The dragon is that uncontrollable element given form, both feared and revered, both chaos and grace. Even the Norse, in their frozen sagas, told of serpents vast enough to encircle the world. Jormungandr, the Midgard serpent, lies beneath the sea, its tail in its mouth, waiting for Ragnarok, the end of all things, when it will rise to poison the sky and battle Thor. Beneath the earth, another dragon sleeps, Fafnir, once a man consumed by greed, who turned into a serpent to guard his treasure. When the hero Sigurd slays him, he bathes in his blood and gains the ability to understand the language of birds. Once again, the pattern repeats. Contact with the dragon brings transformation, even enlightenment, but it also brings corruption. The dragon's hoard is never just gold, it is the weight of desire itself. As centuries passed, the dragon's image evolved, shaped by the tides of belief and the tools of storytelling. The invention of the printing press carried these myths farther than ever before, turning oral legend into written scripture. The Enlightenment tried to banish such creatures from the realm of reason, dismissing them as superstition. But even then, the dragon lingered, in coats of arms, in the names of stars, in the margins of maps where explorers once wrote, "Here be dragons." It is as if humanity could not bear to let them go. We needed the reminder that mystery still existed beyond the horizon. And when the age of imagination returned, when the world's boundaries were once again redrawn, not by explorers, but by artists, the dragon came roaring back. Tolkien's Smaug became the embodiment of greed and grandeur, his every word dripping with arrogance and age. Later, Anne McCaffrey's Pern Dragons offered a gentler vision, creatures of empathy and telepathic bond. And then came the modern rebirth. In film, television, and fantasy, the dragon reborn not just as a monster or symbol, but as a character in its own right, a being of intelligence and emotion. We had, in some strange way, come full circle. To watch Drogon lift from the ashes of a ruined city, wings eclipsing the sun, is to feel the echo of every myth that came before. He is Tiamat and Quetzalcoatl, Apep and Fafnir, Long and Jormungandr, all at once. He is the memory of fire, the pulse of power, the question that refuses to die. What is it about the dragon that we cannot forget? Perhaps because in the end, the dragon is not only a story we tell, it is the shape our fears and hopes take when words are not enough. Even as civilizations rose and fell, dragons persisted, not merely as creatures of story, but as reflections of the human mind itself. They occupy a space that is neither fully tangible nor entirely imaginary, a liminal realm where fear, desire, and wonder intersect. In medieval Europe, artists filled the margins of illuminated manuscripts with dragons that twisted around columns of scripture, their serpentine bodies hinting at chaos restrained by divine order. Each scale, each coiled tail, was a symbol, danger contained, yet never entirely subdued. The creatures, though often monstrous, were mirrors. They showed the human capacity for greed, pride, and wrath, while simultaneously revealing courage, ingenuity, and resilience. In East Asia, dragons were still less about confrontation and more about harmony. They appear in ink paintings, their sinuous forms blending into mountains, rivers, and clouds. The Chinese scholar-poet did not depict the dragon merely to impress or frighten, but to evoke a cosmic rhythm, a balance between heaven, earth, and humanity. The Japanese dragon, similarly, glides through waterfalls and temple gardens, guardian of sacred spaces, an embodiment of spiritual energy that is as natural as the rain that nourishes the land. The dragon's power, in this context, is less about destruction and more about connection, the unseen currents of life made visible. Across the oceans, Mesoamerican cultures invested the dragon with dualities. Quetzalcoatl as both destructive and generative, winged and serpentine, god and guide. The dragon here is both literal and symbolic, teaching that power and responsibility, creation and chaos, are inseparable. In every culture, the dragon is a teacher, a threshold guardian, a force that compels humans to recognize limits and potentials. Encountering a dragon is never simple. It is a confrontation with the magnitude of existence itself. Modern psychology illuminates the persistence of dragons further. Carl Jung recognized the dragon as an archetype, a shadow figure embodying our collective fears and unacknowledged desires. To slay a dragon is to confront the unknown within ourselves. To tame it is to integrate aspects of our psyche that have been ignored or feared. The dragon's fire, then, is more than literal. It is the spark of insight, the heat of transformation, the illumination that comes only from facing the vastness of what is not yet understood. Across continents and epochs, humanity continues to project onto dragons the questions we cannot answer directly, about mortality, power, morality, and the mysteries of nature itself. In literature, dragons have been vessels for moral and philosophical exploration. From Beowulf's dragon, a symbol of inevitable death and the corrosion of greed, to Tolkien's Smaug, who embodies the allure of wealth and the seduction of arrogance. Dragons force protagonists, and by extension, readers, to confront the extremes of experience. Yet even as symbols of destruction, they inspire reverence. In this duality lies their enduring power. They are at once feared and admired, monsters and mentors, embodiments of chaos and architects of wonder. Dragons also inhabit the natural world, or at least the shapes of it. Their forms echo in the patterns of rivers and coastlines, in the curves of mountains, in the flight of birds and bats. Fossils remind us that serpentine and winged creatures once roamed the earth. Dragons, in a sense, that humanity glimpsed and remembered in bone and stone. Perhaps the first stories of dragons arose when humans encountered the impossible remnants of a prehistoric past. The massive vertebrae of creatures long extinct, the teeth of predators beyond imagining. Our ancestors looked upon these relics and imbued them with life, personality, divinity. From these bones grew myths that became stories, stories that became cultural foundations. Art, too, has kept the dragon alive. Across centuries, artists have captured dragons in painting, sculpture, and tapestry, each rendering a society's fears and aspirations. A Baroque canvas might show a knight poised against a fiery serpent, emphasizing human bravery. A Ming Dynasty scroll depicts a dragon twisting amid clouds, embodying cosmic forces. In modern illustration, dragons take on still more forms: biomechanical, ethereal, anthropomorphic. Yet even as their appearances evolve, their essence remains unchanged. Dragons are always intermediaries between what is known and what is beyond comprehension. Even in the physical world, the dragon persists as a metaphor. Economists, politicians, and journalists invoke dragons to describe markets, threats, and crises. Military technology and global conflicts are sometimes framed in terms of dragons, monsters to be conquered, or forces too powerful to ignore. The dragon has become a vessel for abstraction, proving its adaptability not only in myth, but in the frameworks through which humans interpret reality. It is a creature of shape-shifting ideas, as much a symbol of systemic power as it is of fire-breathing terror. And then there is the dragon in cinema, in games, in digital realms. Here, the creature transcends geography and culture entirely. When Drogon roars above King's Landing, when a dragon in a video game sweeps across a fantasy landscape, the audience responds not only to spectacle, but to the accumulated weight of millennia of myth. Every story draws on those older myths, whether knowingly or unconsciously. We respond to dragons not because they are new, but because they are ancient. Each scale a memory, each wing a vestige of a story older than any civilization. Dragons remain enigmatic because they are neither entirely real nor entirely imagined. They exist in the space between knowledge and mystery, between what can be understood and what demands reverence. We cannot fully tame them. We cannot fully explain them. And perhaps that is why they endure. In every culture, in every epoch, dragons serve as reminders that there is always more to the world than what is visible, always more to the human mind than what is measured. They are the guardians of awe, the keepers of mystery. In contemporary art and literature, dragons are no longer merely symbols. They are collaborators in imagination. Writers give them speech, games give them agency, filmmakers give them emotion. They act, think, and feel, yet they remain alien, reminding us of the vastness of possibility. They are companions to wonder, mirrors of ambition, and sometimes gentle guides. The dragon's continued reinvention suggests something profound. Humanity cannot, and perhaps should not, ever outgrow its dragons. For dragons are not simply creatures, they are experience given form. Consciousness confronting infinity, the reflection of everything we hope, fear, and dream. Across time and space, dragons endure because they are not merely stories, they are the living pulse of imagination itself. They breathe in the shadowed corners of our consciousness, coil around our fears, and rise with our hopes. In the mountains, the clouds, the rivers, and the skies, they are glimpsed and imagined, half seen in the glint of sunlight on water, in the curling smoke from a hearth, in the shape of a storm spiraling toward the horizon. Every dragon ever imagined, every legend ever told, converges into a single, ineffable presence, a creature that cannot be fully captured, a thought that refuses to be confined. To walk through a dragon's story is to traverse human history. You feel the cold sands of Mesopotamia beneath your feet as Tiamat coils around primordial chaos. You hear the rains of China pounding against rooftops as long twists through the clouds, blessing the earth with life. You sense the echoing fjords of Norway as Jormungandr sleeps beneath the sea, tail in mouth, awaiting the end of all things. You feel the fire of Smaug's greed and brilliance in the hoarded gold of Middle-earth. And through it all, a singular truth persists. Dragons exist because we need them to, because they are the vessels through which we confront scale, power, and the unknowable. They are paradoxes embodied, both destroyers and creators, terrifying and wise, alien and intimate. They are monsters, yet mentors, threats, yet guides, chaos, yet architects. To confront a dragon is to confront the limits of perception and understanding, the edge of what is known. And yet, even in the face of that incomprehensibility, humans reach toward them, not with fear alone, but with reverence and longing. Dragons are the ultimate expression of the sublime, the sense of awe that comes when something exceeds comprehension, when the world's magnitude reveals itself beyond measure. Consider the dragon in its modern incarnation, in the flickering light of a cinema, on the pages of a novel, in the virtual skies of a game. It retains the same ancient power. Every beat of its wings, every curling plume of smoke, carries the weight of countless generations of storytelling. Even now, as we know more about the natural world than any of our ancestors could have imagined, the dragon remains untamed, uncharted, mysterious. Our maps no longer label lands with "Here be dragons," yet the dragons themselves endure, because they are not confined to geography. They exist in consciousness, in imagination, in the ceaseless human craving for wonder. And there, in that space between knowledge and mystery, dragons become eternal. They are memory and prophecy, history and possibility, the embodiment of what we do not yet understand. In the echo of a roar, we hear the voice of the cosmos itself. In the gleam of a scale, the reflection of all that has been and all that might be. They remind us that not everything can be tamed, explained, or conquered. Some things are meant to remain beyond reach, to inspire awe, to kindle imagination. Even in silence, they speak. A dragon's absence is presence, the sense that the world is larger than our perception, that the unknown stretches infinitely beyond the edges of certainty. We see them in the curl of a river, the flicker of a storm, the glimmer of firelight on stone. We feel their breath in the wind, their shadow in the clouds. They are alive in memory, in story, in the act of imagining itself. And in that, they are immortal. So when a dragon rises from the screen today, when it lifts into the sky above a ruined city, when it curls around a treasure no human hand can claim, we respond not just to spectacle, but to legacy. The dragon reminds us of who we are, seekers of meaning, explorers of the unknown, dreamers of impossible shapes. And as we watch, as we imagine, as we listen to the whispers of scales and wings, we understand something fundamental. The dragon has never truly been ours to command. It has always belonged to the mystery itself. The story of the dragon does not end. It cannot. It is older than memory, larger than history, and vaster than the boundaries of imagination. It is the embodiment of awe, the eternal question, the whisper of the world's infinite possibilities. In every shadow, in every flame, in every curling mist over mountain and sea, the dragon waits, patient, eternal, unknowable. And as long as humans continue to dream, to tell stories, to seek what lies beyond the horizon, dragons will remain. Soaring forever at the edge of our understanding, a living testament to the majesty of mystery itself. We have spent centuries enthralled by dragons that scorch villages and hoard treasure. Dragons that are conquered by knights and feared as the embodiment of chaos. Yet, beyond the forests and mountains of Europe, far across oceans and deserts, lies a world where dragons were never mere monsters. Let us journey thousands of years back, to where dragons were not to be slain, but revered, where their power was not destructive, but life-giving, where their coils stretched across rivers and clouds as conduits of wisdom, prosperity, and cosmic balance. In the rivers and mountains of ancient China, the Lung dragon rose as a creature of majesty and benevolence. It is impossible to think of the Lung without sensing movement, the undulating flow of a river, the rising swirl of mist over a valley, the curling wind that bends the bamboo in a quiet storm. These dragons have no wings, yet they soar through the heavens. They move not in violence, but in rhythm, their scales catching sunlight like liquid gold, their eyes reflecting a knowledge older than the written word. To see a Lung was to witness the harmony of the cosmos made tangible, a living symbol of the intricate balance between heaven and earth. The Lung governs water. Rivers, lakes, and seas are its domain. Rainfall obeys its will. Farmers and emperors alike look to the dragon, not as a creature to be feared, but as a mediator between human need and the capricious forces of nature. The Lung brought clouds and storms, yet it also brought nourishment, replenishing fields and filling granaries. In art, it is often depicted twisting through clouds, a pearl of wisdom clutched delicately between clawed hands, a symbol not of greed, but of enlightenment. Its presence promises abundance, a cycle of prosperity that flows in harmony with the seasons. In the halls of emperors, the dragon was more than symbol, it was sovereign. The emperor was called the son of the dragon, and his authority was sanctified by association with these celestial beings. Throne rooms were adorned with their forms, robes embroidered with their sinuous bodies, walls alive with their twisting, ascending shapes. To rule with the dragon's favor was to wield the mandate of heaven itself. Every decision, every decree carried the weight of cosmic approval, as if the dragon's breath infused the empire with wisdom, justice, and balance. The Lung embodies dualities with elegance. It is both mighty and graceful, fierce and gentle, ethereal yet intimately tied to the natural world. Its scales are the pattern of the universe. Its movements mirror the currents of wind and water. Legends tell of dragons appearing in times of crisis, droughts ended by the sudden fall of rain, floods contained by the guiding of rivers, famine alleviated by the dragon's invisible hand. In these stories, dragons are never capricious tyrants. They are teachers, guides, and guardians of life itself. Art and architecture capture the dragon's influence with an almost reverential precision. On the corners of temple roofs, dragons curl to ward off evil spirits, their mouths open, eyes blazing, bodies twisting into the sky as if to touch the very sun. Paintings show them undulating through clouds and waves, sometimes accompanied by immortals or sages, sometimes alone, their presence commanding the attention of all who gaze upon them. The dragon's pearl, a recurring motif, is a symbol of wisdom, enlightenment, and spiritual energy, illuminating the path toward understanding the cosmos. Yet China is not the only land where dragons govern the balance between heaven and earth. In Japan, the Ryu moves with a similar grace, but carries its own distinct cultural resonance. While the lung is the embodiment of cosmic authority, the Ryu is often associated with local rivers, protective deities, and sacred shrines. Japanese dragons are water spirits as well, their scales shimmering like koi in a stream, their coils shaping clouds and storms. They intervene in the world not to dominate, but to guide, to protect, to restore harmony. Festivals, shrines, and artworks preserve their presence, reminding communities that the dragon's favor is a blessing, its ire a lesson in respect for nature. Korea, too, reveres its dragons, the Yong, as guardians of water and prosperity. The Yong is a dragon of mountains and seas, often depicted with a horned head, long whiskers, and a body twisting like a flowing river. Korean dragons are protectors of the people, the rainmakers who ensure that crops flourish, the guardians who maintain harmony between human civilization and the natural world. Unlike Western dragons, the Yong is rarely a foe to be conquered. It is a force to be understood, respected, and celebrated. Royal insignia, temple carvings, and folk art echo the dragon's benevolent power, reinforcing the dragon's role as both cosmic and cultural guide. Across East Asia, the pattern emerges. Dragons are not monsters. They are conduits of order and abundance. Their power is not stolen, it is shared. Their wisdom is not hidden, it is offered to those who seek balance. Where the Western dragon embodies fear and chaos, the Eastern dragon embodies the sacred, the instructive, the harmonious. Its movements mirror the rhythms of the world. Its scales reflect the shifting patterns of existence. Its gaze reminds humanity of the unseen forces that shape life. In the Lung, Ryu, and Yong, we find dragons as they were always meant to be, embodiments of cosmic balance, guardians of prosperity, and teachers of wisdom. They soar not above us as tyrants, but beside us as guides. They coil not to constrain, but to connect, the human to the natural, the temporal to the eternal, the known to the infinite. To understand these dragons is to understand a culture's vision of the world, where harmony is not a human achievement alone, but a reflection of forces far larger, far more intricate than the eye can perceive. Dragons do not exist merely in stories. They live in the rhythm of daily life, in the currents of rivers and the shifting clouds over mountains. In ancient China, legends tell of emperors who consulted dragons before important decisions, seeking guidance not through words, but through the patterns of rain, the movement of clouds, the ripple of water across a still pond. One such tale recounts the emperor who, faced with a famine, summoned a dragon to the capital. The skies darkened as the dragon rose, curling through the heavens, and by the next dawn, rainfall had soaked the parched fields. The crops thrived, and the emperor decreed that the dragon's image be carved into temple gates and palace walls, a perpetual symbol of benevolent power. The lung was a constant reminder. Leadership without harmony is fragile, and prosperity is granted not by authority alone, but by alignment with cosmic order. Stories of dragons often intertwine with sages, immortals, and celestial beings. One famous legend recounts the dragon who, seeing a wandering scholar lost in a drought-stricken province, transformed the clouds into a torrent of rain and carried him to safety upon its back. The scholar later chronicled the dragon's intervention, describing how it spoke not in words, but in the language of currents and wind. This is a recurring theme. Dragons communicate through the elements. Their wisdom is felt, their guidance intuited. Humans are never masters of dragons. They are learners, the apprentices of a cosmic teacher whose lessons are vast and subtle. In Japan, Ryu dragons are celebrated in ritual and festival. often appearing in processions and performances designed to honor the spirits of rivers and mountains. During the annual Tenjin Matsuri in Osaka, for instance, the river becomes a stage. Dragon-shaped floats glide through the water, their undulating bodies reflected in rippling currents, accompanied by the rhythmic beating of drums and the rising chant of participants. The festival is not simply pageantry. It is a reminder that prosperity depends on respect for natural forces. That harmony between human activity and elemental power is essential for survival and success. The Ryu, though less directly tied to emperors than the Lung, embodies the principle that the sacred is present in every flowing current and gust of wind. Korean dragons, too, inhabit festivals, art, and legend, but with a slightly different nuance. The Yong is often depicted with a horned head, long whiskers, and a flowing body that suggests not only water, but authority over natural law itself. Folk stories describe dragons appearing to warn communities of impending floods, guiding rivers to prevent disaster. Unlike the dragons of European lore, which must be slain to restore order, the Yong intervenes gently, correcting imbalance rather than demanding conquest. It is a manifestation of the principle that power is not exercised through domination, but through guidance, foresight, and subtle influence. Kings and commoners alike would seek its favor, crafting images of dragons for temples, palaces, and bridges. To honor the Yong was to invite both protection and abundance into one's life. The dragon pearl is a recurring motif throughout East Asia. Often held delicately in a clawed hand, it represents not wealth, but enlightenment, spiritual energy, and the harmonization of the world's forces. Myths describe dragons chasing pearls across rivers, clouds, and skies, their movements tracing invisible pathways of ki, the vital energy that animates the universe. In some tales, the pearl grants wisdom to those who observe it carefully. In others, it is a symbol of moral virtue, reminding humans that integrity and understanding are the foundations of true power. The dragon's pearl is therefore a bridge between human and divine, between mortality and the eternal, between chaos and order. Art and architecture reflect the dragon's central role in society. In Chinese temples, dragons curl along eaves, their forms guarding sacred spaces while guiding the flow of spiritual energy. In Japanese shrines, carved wooden dragons twist around staircases and beams, integrating sacred geometry with natural symbolism. In Korea, dragons appear on royal robes and in mural paintings, a reminder that the emperor's authority is sanctioned by alignment with universal forces. Across East Asia, the dragon is never merely decorative. It is functional, symbolic, and alive, a constant presence reminding humanity of its place within a larger order. Festivals celebrate dragons in ways that reinforce social and spiritual cohesion. In southern China, the Dragon Boat Festival honors the dragon as a bringer of life and fertility. Boats are sculpted to resemble dragons, their long bodies slicing through rivers in synchronized harmony. Participants paddle in unison, their movements echoing the dragon's own undulating motion. The event is both celebratory and didactic. It reinforces community, pays homage to natural forces, and reminds participants that prosperity and survival are shared responsibilities, guided by wisdom beyond human mastery. Dragons also inhabit literature and philosophy, appearing as metaphors for moral and ethical guidance. Confucian scholars often cited dragons as examples of righteous power, restrained, wise, and aligned with the principles of heaven. Taoist texts describe dragons as intermediaries between the material and spiritual worlds, creatures that embody the flow of qi and the harmonization of opposites. A dragon is not static, it is dynamic, moving with the currents of the world, shaping events, while maintaining balance. To understand a dragon is to understand the subtle interplay of forces that govern life itself. Through these stories, rituals, and philosophies, it becomes clear that the dragon is more than a creature. It is a paradigm. It teaches humanity how to wield power without arrogance, to seek wisdom without dominance, to coexist with forces beyond comprehension. In East Asia, dragons are not adversaries. They are collaborators, co-creators of prosperity, guides through the unpredictable currents of life. They remind us that true authority comes from alignment with the natural and cosmic order, not from brute force. Yet, despite their benevolence, dragons retain mystery. Even in the most detailed myth, the Lung, Ryu, and Yang are never fully known. Their movements are described but cannot be predicted. Their power is understood but cannot be commanded. A dragon might appear in the form of mist, rising over a river, or in the glimmer of sunlight on a mountain peak, leaving humans to interpret its presence with reverence and care. This ambiguity is deliberate. It ensures that the dragon remains a teacher, not a servant, that wisdom is earned, not given, and that prosperity is sought in balance, rather than seized through domination. Dragons are not merely myth. They are the pulse of dynasties, the invisible architects of power. In imperial China, the Lung was inseparable from governance. The emperor's throne was known as the Dragon Throne, his robes embroidered with the twisting coils of dragons that seemed to move with the wearer's breath. Every gesture, every decree was framed by this silent presence, the dragon as both legitimizer and guardian. Officials wore dragon motifs in their ceremonial garb. Court painters depicted dragons soaring across ceilings, and palace walls were alive with murals where dragons emerged from clouds to descend upon landscapes. To the people, this was a constant reminder that the emperor's authority was not merely political, it was cosmic. The dragon ensured that the ruler remained aligned with heaven, that decisions mirrored the natural order, that prosperity flowed as intended by forces beyond human comprehension. In Japanese tradition, the Ryu similarly intertwined with authority, though more subtly. Samurai lords commissioned dragon carvings for castles and temples, dragons curling through gates as guardians and omens of protection. Yet the Ryu was also a figure of moral instruction, a reminder that leadership required not only courage but discernment, that strength without wisdom was hollow. Festivals such as the Kanda Matsuri in Tokyo celebrated dragons through floats and performances, reinforcing the link between civic cohesion, respect for natural forces, and the enduring presence of the divine in everyday life. The Ryu thus serves as both protector and teacher, a living emblem of harmony and guidance. In Korea, the Yong's influence extended through dynasties as well. Kings employed dragon imagery to signal their virtue and authority, commissioning murals and sculptures that reminded citizens that rulership was contingent on alignment with cosmic balance. Scholars wrote poems praising the dragon's wisdom, while artisans infused temple roofs and royal palaces with dragons whose twisting forms appeared to breathe life into stone and timber. Like their Chinese and Japanese counterparts, Korean dragons were both symbolic and functional, guardians of order, mediators of prosperity, embodiments of lessons humanity must learn to survive in concert with the natural world. Beyond governance, dragons permeated literature and poetry, inspiring some of the richest cultural expressions in East Asia. Chinese poets of the Tang dynasty wrote of dragons soaring through the clouds, rain coiling behind their tails, the world bending subtly to their will. The dragon's movements were metaphors for the flow of qi, the invisible energy linking humans, nature, and cosmos. In Japan, poets crafted haiku invoking Ru as fleeting as morning mist yet eternal in influence. Korean scholars composed epic narratives and songs celebrating Yong, highlighting not only its power over water, but its moral guidance, a force teaching humility and foresight. Across the literary landscape, dragons were not props. They were teachers, guides, symbols, living threads weaving society together across centuries. Dragons also shaped artistic innovation. Ceramics, bronzes, lacquerware, and textiles across East Asia featured dragons in dynamic forms, their bodies twisting across surfaces, their eyes gleaming with awareness, their claws clutching symbolic pearls. Each artifact was a reminder that dragons were not static figures, but embodiments of energy, life, and moral principle. Sculptors experimented with the sinuous forms of dragons. Painters captured their essence in clouds and waves. And calligraphers intertwined their forms with strokes of ink that carried rhythm, force, and elegance. The dragon became a lens through which aesthetic mastery and spiritual understanding converged. The festivals surrounding dragons were more than celebration, they were affirmation. Communities gathered to honor the dragon's benevolence, reenacting myths that had been passed down for generations. Dragon boat races, floating floats, ceremonial dances, and ritual offerings connected people with forces that were invisible yet palpable, ensuring that the dragon remained present not only in story but in lived experience. Through these practices, dragons became cultural anchors, threading the past into the present, reminding each generation that prosperity, wisdom, and harmony require awareness of forces far larger than oneself. Yet even as dragons guided emperors, inspired poets, and energized festivals, they remained fundamentally mysterious. Their presence was unmistakable, but their intentions were not entirely knowable. The Lung, Ryu, and Yang are creatures whose wisdom surpasses human comprehension, whose power cannot be mastered, only respected. To glimpse a dragon in a painting, to feel its breath in a ritual, to sense its influence in the pattern of rainfall, is to confront something simultaneously intimate and ineffable. It is a confrontation with the sublime, a recognition that the universe is vaster, deeper, and more intricate than our eyes, our logic, or our hands can grasp. Even in contemporary East Asia, dragons remain omnipresent. Festivals light cities with fire and color. Temples preserve ancient carvings and statues. Literature and media reimagine dragons in ways that are modern yet rooted in tradition. Video games, films, and animation depict dragons in fantastical adventures. Yet the echoes of the Lung, Ryu, and Yang remain. They are symbols of wisdom, guardians of prosperity, arbiters of harmony. And although technology has changed the medium, the essence has not altered. Dragons remain teachers, guides, and eternal presences, reminding humanity that life's forces are beyond simple comprehension, that prosperity is contingent on balance, and that wisdom is discovered, not seized. Dragons, in all their East Asian forms, embody continuity across centuries. They are not fleeting creatures of fear, nor whimsical inventions of fancy. They are living metaphors for the principles that sustain life: harmony, patience, insight, and the respectful exercise of power. Their presence in art, literature, ritual, and governance demonstrates a profound understanding that the human experience is inseparable from the forces of the cosmos. That alignment with nature and principle is both necessary and sacred. And yet the dragon never reveals its full self. It is always slightly beyond grasp, partially hidden in mist, reflected in rippling water, or glimpsed in the curling smoke of incense. Its wisdom is hinted at, not fully explained. Its power is felt, not commanded. In this deliberate mystery lies its enduring authority. Dragons teach by reminding humans that ultimate understanding is always just beyond reach, that true reverence requires humility, and that prosperity and harmony are gifts of alignment, not conquest. To walk through the myths, observe the rituals, and study the artistic expressions of the Lung, Ryu, and Yang is to participate in a grand continuum of cultural and spiritual knowledge. One sees the interweaving of human ambition and cosmic balance, the recognition that life flows through currents larger than any one person, and that wisdom is earned through observation, respect, and action aligned with enduring principles. Dragons are not distant. They are ever present, guiding, shaping, inspiring, and reminding us that we inhabit a world of subtle power and infinite mystery. Even now, the dragon's legacy thrives. In cities and temples, in festivals and folklore, in stories and art, it persists as an eternal presence. The Lung's coils ripple through rivers. The Ryu glides through the skies of Japan, invisible yet felt. The Yang watches over mountains and seas, its influence subtle, enduring, inescapable. These dragons are neither conquered nor diminished. They are eternal, teaching humanity the same lessons across millennia: to respect power, to seek wisdom, to honor balance, and to recognize that the world is larger, more intricate, and more wondrous than mere human comprehension can ever contain. And so, as we step back and gaze upon the dragons of East Asia, we are left in awe, not of their strength alone, but of their enduring presence, their subtle guidance, their unfathomable wisdom. They are teachers of balance, guardians of prosperity, and eternal reminders that life, in all its complexity, is a tapestry of forces far greater than ourselves. They do not demand understanding, they invite it. They do not bow to humans, they coexist with them. And in that coexistence, in that gentle but unyielding assertion of presence and purpose, we recognize the dragon for what it has always been: a living symbol of awe, mystery, and the profound beauty of alignment with the universe. Dragons are not merely symbols of authority or cosmic balance. They are actors in the stories that define civilization, shaping events both grand and intimate. One of the most celebrated tales of the Chinese Lung recounts the dragon who emerged during the reign of Emperor Yu the Great, the founder of the Xia dynasty. The Yellow River, swollen with floodwaters, threatened villages and fields alike. As legend tells, the Lung rose from the riverbed, scales glinting like molten gold, eyes reflecting the sky itself. With a graceful sweep of its body, it guided the waters into channels, preventing devastation and ensuring life returned to the parched land. The emperor, witnessing the dragon's intervention, proclaimed that the dragon's favor was a reflection of righteous governance. From that moment forward, dragons became the eternal companions of those who ruled with virtue. Their presence a constant reminder that alignment with cosmic and natural forces was essential for prosperity. Another tale, lesser known yet equally compelling, describes a Lung who appeared to a wandering scholar during a particularly harsh drought in southern China. The scholar, weary and despairing, saw clouds twisting unnaturally over the mountains. From them, the dragon descended, coiling around the peaks, its breath forming clouds that spilled rain upon the fields. The dragon did not speak in words, but conveyed a message through the rhythm of falling water and the gentle undulation of wind through bamboo groves. The scholar understood instinctively. Wisdom is conveyed not through command, but through observation, attentiveness, and the willingness to learn from forces larger than oneself. In this story, the dragon becomes both teacher and mirror, demonstrating that human knowledge is always partial, always a reflection of a more profound cosmic understanding. In Japan, Ryu dragons feature in narratives that emphasize protection, guidance, and transformation. A famous story recounts a Ryu who aided fishermen caught in a sudden typhoon. As the storm rose, waves towering like mountains, the dragon appeared, coiling its vast body through the sky, guiding the boats safely to shore. Fishermen would later honor the Ryu in shrine rituals, recognizing that survival depended not on human strength alone, but on the wisdom and benevolence of forces unseen. These tales highlight the Ryu's role as mediator, bridging human fragility and natural power. a guide rather than a conquerable adversary. Korean Yong legends likewise illustrate the dragon's integration into both practical and moral life. One such story tells of a Yong who appeared to warn villagers of an impending flood. Its form, twisting through clouds and cascading over mountains, directed water away from homes and farmland. The villagers interpreted the dragon's guidance as both a literal and symbolic lesson. Those who respect the rhythms of nature and act with foresight will find safety and prosperity. Those who act impulsively risk chaos. Across centuries, the Yong has functioned as a living emblem of wisdom, a constant reminder that understanding the flow of life is as essential as any human effort. Comparatively, while the Lung, Ryu, and Yong share themes of benevolence, water, and cosmic balance, each carries distinct cultural nuances. The Lung emphasizes cosmic authority, imperial favor, and the integration of human governance with natural and celestial rhythms. The Ryu highlights local protection, moral instruction, and the integration of human communities with spiritual and environmental forces. The Yong blends guidance with prudence, reflecting the interdependence of humans and nature in everyday life. Across these forms, the dragon's message is consistent. Prosperity, survival, and wisdom depend on respect, alignment, and attentiveness to forces larger than oneself. Dragons continue to shape culture in art and architecture. Chinese palaces depict Lung dragons ascending clouds, coiling through gardens, and curling along temple eaves, their forms suggesting motion even in stillness. Japanese shrines present Ryu with elongated bodies twisting around beams, their presence stabilizing the sacred spaces they inhabit. Korean palaces and temples showcase Yong with flowing river-like forms, reminding viewers that authority, protection, and wisdom are intertwined with natural balance. Across these regions, the dragon's artistic expressions merge aesthetic mastery with spiritual instruction, demonstrating that beauty and wisdom are inseparable in the presence of the sacred. Modern interpretations reflect this continuity. In contemporary East Asia, dragons are celebrated in festivals, literature, and media, retaining their symbolic weight. Animated films, video games, and novels reimagine dragons with fantastical attributes, yet the echoes of Lung, Ryu, and Yong remain. They guide protagonists, influence landscapes, and embody elemental forces. Festivals continue to honor dragons through boat races, dances, and performances, ensuring that these creatures remain integrated into both cultural consciousness and lived experience. They are not relics of a distant past, but living symbols, as present today as they were thousands of years ago. Philosophically, Eastern dragons embody principles that resonate beyond myth. They teach that authority is inseparable from virtue, that power without wisdom is fragile, and that human life is part of a broader cosmic system. Their presence underscores the importance of balance between ambition and humility, action and observation, human desire and natural law. In engaging with the dragon, one learns patience, reverence, and the subtle art of aligning with the unseen rhythms of existence. These lessons, encoded in myth, ritual, and art, continue to inform moral and spiritual understanding across generations. Psychologically, the dragon functions as a model of integration. It represents the harmonization of dualities, strength and gentleness, authority and service, human aspiration and cosmic alignment. In facing the dragon, whether in ritual, story, or imagination, humans encounter a reflection of their highest potential and their deepest humility. The dragon's wisdom is not dictated. It is imparted through observation, interaction, and alignment with natural and ethical principles. In this sense, dragons are not simply cultural artifacts. They are active participants in human consciousness, shaping perception, behavior, and aspiration. Across centuries and geographies, The Lung, Ryu, and Yong endure because they fulfill a need beyond storytelling. They embody harmony, wisdom, and prosperity, reminding humanity that life is guided by forces both visible and unseen. To honor the dragon is to acknowledge the complexity of existence, the interdependence of all things, and the necessity of respect for power greater than oneself. These dragons teach that prosperity is contingent on balance. That authority is rooted in virtue, and that understanding is gained through humility and attentiveness. Even in the present, their presence persists in subtle ways. A ripple across a river may suggest the Lung's unseen coil. A storm cloud gathering over a mountain may echo the Ryu's breath. The flow of water through a village may mirror the Yong's guidance. Dragons exist not only in art and literature, but in the very patterns of life, reminding humanity that alignment with natural, moral, and cosmic order is essential for survival and flourishing. Their influence is pervasive, their power enduring, their lessons timeless. In every civilization that revered them, dragons were never confined to myth alone. They breathed through the pulse of the calendar, through the cadence of festivals, through the rhythm of everyday life. Across East Asia, their presence shaped not just imagination, but the very fabric of ritual. The rituals themselves acting as bridges between the human and the divine, the visible and the invisible, the fleeting and the eternal. The Dragon Boat Festival, known in China as Duanwu, stands among the most vivid and enduring expressions of this sacred relationship. Each summer, rivers across the nation shimmer with motion. Long, narrow boats carved in the likeness of dragons, their painted heads fierce yet noble, their bodies rippling with scales that catch the sun like liquid gold. Teams of rowers, their movements synchronized, propel these dragons of wood and color across the water. The pounding of drums echoing through valleys and cities alike. The rhythm is not mere sport, it is invocation. Each stroke of the oar mirrors the undulating motion of a celestial dragon coiling through clouds, summoning rain, ensuring fertility and abundance. The festival's origins are ancient and layered. Some say it honors Kuei Yuan, the poet-statesman, whose devotion to his homeland led him to sacrifice himself in despair. The dragon boats, they say, were sent to retrieve his spirit, and the drums were meant to ward away the creatures that haunted the deep. Yet beneath the legend lies a more primordial resonance, a reaffirmation of the dragon's gift of life. To race upon the river is to celebrate the currents of existence itself, the cyclical dance between water and sky, humanity and heaven, life and the unseen. Throughout China, dragons also mark the calendar's turning points. During the Lunar New Year, dragon dances sweep through streets, long figures carried by dozens of performers, weaving in serpentine motion under lantern light. The dragon's body ripples in rhythm with the crowd's heartbeat. Its head bobs with grace and power. Fireworks ignite the sky, mimicking thunderclouds and lightning. The celestial language of dragons. These dances are more than spectacle. They are invocation, asking the dragon to awaken, to bring prosperity, health, and renewal. The dragon's dance is the dance of energy itself, the manifestation of the qi that flows through all things. In Japan, similar reverence appears in the rituals that honor Ryu. Shrines dedicated to dragon deities stand beside rivers, waterfalls, and coastal cliffs. One such shrine, Ryujin Shrine, overlooks the sea, its gates perpetually kissed by mist. Fishermen once came here to offer sake and rice before setting sail, asking the dragon of the deep to grant safe passage and generous catch. In the legend of Ryujin, the dragon king of the sea, we glimpse a divinity whose palace lies beneath the waves, filled with treasures not of gold, but of wisdom and harmony. Ryujin is both ruler and protector of the sea, commanding the tides and granting favor to those who live in rhythm with the natural order. His stories teach that wealth taken without respect brings misfortune, while generosity ensures abundance. Festivals like Nagasaki's Kunchi and other coastal celebrations continue to honor the dragon's role as guardian of water and bringer of fortune. In these events, dragon dances intertwine with music and prayer, invoking the Ryu to bless the community, calm storms, and fill nets. The dragon becomes both symbol and participant, a silent partner in the fragile balance between human endeavor and natural law. In Korea, the Yong remains an intimate part of both ritual and art. Ancient records speak of ceremonies held to call rain during times of drought. Monks, farmers, and kings alike gathered at riverbanks, offering incense, rice wine, and song. It was said that when the offerings pleased the Yong, a cool breeze would stir, clouds would gather, and rain would fall like pearls upon the earth. The dragon's favor was not begged. It was earned through reverence, sincerity, and communal harmony. Even today, in certain villages, festivals celebrate the Yong's legacy, with dragon effigies carried through the streets, dancers mimicking the dragon's motion as chants rise like wind through the trees. These ceremonies are not mere survival of ancient myth. They are living expressions of philosophy. In every dance, every race, every offering, there is acknowledgement of an unspoken truth, that humanity thrives not through dominion over nature, but through cooperation with it. The dragon becomes the embodiment of that cooperation, its sinuous form representing the ceaseless flow of life, its flight through cloud and rain symbolizing renewal and continuity. Beyond ritual, the dragon's symbolism flows into the subtleties of daily existence. The phrase "to ascend like a dragon" describes not only success, but success achieved through virtue, wisdom, and alignment with the greater order. To have the heart of a dragon is to act with courage tempered by compassion. In architecture, dragons are carved into the eaves of homes to guard against ill fortune, their fierce visages not to frighten, but to protect. In art, dragons are painted above waves and clouds, signifying mastery of both heaven and earth. And in the calendar, the year of the dragon remains a cycle associated with power, vitality, and auspicious beginnings. Children born in that year are sent to carry the dragon's energy, destined for great things, guided by the unseen. In literature and poetry, the dragon's image unfurls endlessly. Tang and Song poets wrote of dragons emerging from mountain mist, their bodies coiling like ink strokes on silk, their breath mingling with the clouds. In Japan, Ryu appears as a whisper in haiku, a hint of motion in the rain, a reflection of eternity in the moment. Korean poets described Yong rising from rivers, scales shimmering in dawn light, a metaphor for awakening consciousness. These verses, delicate yet profound, reveal how deeply dragons were woven into the perception of duty, wisdom, and the sacred. Philosophers, too, invoked the dragon to articulate their understanding of existence. In Taoism, the lung is the supreme embodiment of the Tao, fluid, adaptable, undefinable. Just as water takes the shape of its vessel yet remains unchanged, the dragon moves between realms, a living lesson in the art of harmony and transformation. Confucian scholars, by contrast, saw in the dragon the embodiment of righteous rule, power used wisely, authority exercised with restraint and compassion. In Buddhism, dragons serve as protectors of the Dharma, guardians of sacred texts and temples, bridging the material and spiritual worlds. Across these disciplines, the dragon teaches the same lesson in countless forms. Power is sacred only when balanced by wisdom, and harmony is born of humility before forces greater than oneself. In the dragon's undulating motion, one glimpses the eternal truth that life flows, bends, and transforms, never static, never absolute. And so the dragon endures, not only as image or idea, but as a presence that moves through culture, history, and consciousness. When we see the shimmer of scales in sunlight on water, when we hear the rush of wind that bends the trees, when rain descends after long drought, we are reminded of the same truth that ancient poets and emperors understood, that the dragon is not a creature apart, but the essence of connection itself. It is in this sense that Eastern dragons remain alive, not confined to temples or scrolls, but breathing through the very rhythm of existence. They are the invisible threads that tie humanity to the cosmos, the symbols through which we remember our place within the great, ever-shifting harmony of life. And in their enduring mystery, they invite us to listen to the whisper of water, the hum of wind, the quiet pulse of the earth, where even now the dragons still dwell. There comes a point in every story, in every civilization that is sung of dragons, where myth ceases to be about the external world and begins to mirror the inner one. The dragon that once soared through clouds and rivers, that shaped the destiny of kings and brought rain to the parched earth, becomes something subtler, a living metaphor for the soul's own ascent and transformation. In the East, this understanding is not separate from myth, but inherent within it. For the Lung, the Ryu, and the Yang are not only guardians of water and balance, they are reflections of consciousness itself, of the boundless power that resides within the human spirit, waiting to awaken. In the Taoist imagination, the dragon is the perfect embodiment of the Tao, elusive, transformative, ungraspable. The dragon rides the mist, an ancient proverb says, and the wise ride the currents of change. Just as the dragon moves between water and sky, unseen yet ever present, so too does the awakened mind move between form and emptiness, between the tangible and the ineffable. The dragon's motion through clouds becomes a lesson. Do not resist the shifting nature of existence. Flow with it. Adapt, as the dragon adapts to storm and current, never fixed, never bound. To visualize a dragon is to visualize the essence of transformation. The scholar who meditates upon the lung sees in its coils the endless flow of energy through all things, the ceaseless rising and falling of life itself. Its scales glint like waves under sun and moon, each one a fragment of the universe, reflecting both light and shadow. Its eyes hold the calm of eternity. To dream of such a dragon is to glimpse enlightenment, not as escape from the world, but as perfect attunement to it. In Japanese thought, the Ryu's presence is equally interior. Associated with water and the spirit, it becomes a symbol of mindfulness and balance. Temples built near waterfalls often carry dragon carvings, their open mouths catching the rushing flow. The message is clear. The mind, too, must flow, taking shape without resistance. When the Ryu appears in dreams or art, it does not warn or threaten. It calls the observer inward, inviting reflection on harmony, on one's place in the endless movement of life. The Ryu's dance across the sky is the soul's own rhythm, the measure of awareness that neither clings nor commands, but moves with all that is. Korean philosophy, steeped in Confucian and Buddhist tradition, sees in the Yang a mirror of moral transformation. The Yang, with its noble form and clear eyes, represents the human potential to ascend from ignorance to wisdom, from chaos to clarity. Ancient texts tell of the carp that leapt the dragon gate, a metaphor so enduring that it remains part of everyday language. The carp, through perseverance and strength, becomes the dragon, transcending limitation through courage and virtue. It is a parable of transformation, of the soul's journey from the narrow confines of self toward the boundless expanse of enlightenment. In this sense, dragons are not distant gods, but intimate guides. Their power is not the fire that consumes, but the light that reveals. When ancient monks painted dragons on temple walls, or inscribed them into manuscripts, they did so not merely to honor a mythic creature, but to remind every seeker that wisdom lies in awakening the dragon within. That unseen potential that can rise from the depths of ignorance into the clear air of understanding. The pearl the dragon holds becomes the heart of this symbolism. It is the luminous core of wisdom, the spark of consciousness itself. To chase the pearl, as dragons do through cloud and storm, is to seek enlightenment, a pursuit endless, circular, eternal. In some traditions, the pearl is said to represent the moon, reflected upon the water, ever beautiful yet intangible. In others, it is the distilled essence of the universe, containing the power of creation. The dragon's pursuit is our own, the endless striving toward understanding, the yearning to grasp the ineffable. Philosophers often liken the dragon's flight to the awakening of the mind. As the dragon ascends through clouds, so does awareness rise through the veils of illusion. The dragon's roar is thunder, the voice of truth breaking through ignorance. Its breath is wind, the subtle energy that animates all life. Its descent with rain is compassion, the giving of sustenance to all beings. In each movement of the dragon, the ancients saw an aspect of the enlightened mind. Powerful yet gentle, immense yet benevolent, mysterious yet ever-present. This vision of the dragon as inner archetype extended into the arts of meditation, calligraphy, and martial discipline. In the stillness of a monk's breath, the dragon coils. In the flow of ink upon parchment, it unravels into form. In the measured movements of Tai Chi or the disciplined grace of a sword master, the dragon's rhythm is felt. The union of power and restraint, of intention and release. To live with the dragon's awareness is to live in balance. To move as water moves, to act without grasping, to be powerful without aggression. Even today, this spiritual dragon continues to live in the quiet moments of modern life. In the reflection of neon lights on wet city streets, one can still glimpse the shimmer of scales. In the hush before a storm, the pulse of ancient breath, the dragon is a symbol that refuses to fade, because it embodies not a culture or an era, but a truth, that the forces shaping the world are the same that shape the human heart. To understand one is to understand the other. In art, literature, and philosophy, the dragon thus becomes the perfect metaphor for unity between heaven and earth, body and spirit, matter and meaning. To awaken the dragon is to awaken the awareness that all things are connected, that nothing exists in isolation. The dragon's body, twisting through water and cloud, encircles the universe, a living mandala in motion. Within its coils lies the secret the sages always taught, that harmony is not static peace, but dynamic balance, the ceaseless dance of creation and dissolution, light and shadow, birth and return. And in this realization, awe deepens into reverence. The dragon ceases to be a myth and becomes a teacher. It shows that wisdom is not a destination, but a rhythm, a way of being. It reminds us that strength need not be loud, that power may be silent, that the greatest mastery lies in surrender to the flow. To contemplate the dragon is to contemplate the essence of being, vast, fluid, eternal. So when the rain falls after long silence, when rivers shimmer beneath the morning sun, when mist curls over distant mountains, remember, these are the dragon's movements, gentle and immense, weaving the world together. The same force that stirs the seas stirs within you. The same wisdom that guides the dragon's flight guides the rhythm of your breath. And perhaps that is the greatest revelation the East ever offered the world, that the dragon, in all its mystery, was never truly out there at all. It was within. Across the vast expanse of East Asia, across mountains that rise like jagged teeth into the sky, across rivers that twist like silver threads through valleys, across oceans that mirror the heavens, the dragon remains both present and unseen. It is in the curling mist, in the shimmer of scales upon water, in the rising storm clouds and the falling rain, the invisible pulse of life itself. The lung, Ryu, and Yang are no longer merely creatures of legend or symbols of imperial authority. They are the embodiment of forces that have always shaped the world, guiding not only the flow of rivers and the turn of seasons, but the very rhythm of human aspiration and consciousness. To encounter a dragon is to encounter the world in its entirety, vast, unpredictable, sublime, and yet intimate. The lung twists through the clouds above China, its sinuous body invisible, yet palpably present in every monsoon, every river bend, every shifting pattern of wind through bamboo groves. It carries the weight of millennia of stories, of emperors who sought guidance in times of famine and war, of scholars who glimpsed its form in dreams, of farmers who prayed for rain, knowing that the dragon's favor could turn drought into abundance. Every pearl it cradles between clawed hands is a symbol of wisdom distilled from chaos, a reminder that knowledge is neither simple nor linear, but emerges from alignment with forces far greater than oneself. Its presence is as gentle as the mist curling over a mountain lake, yet as immense as the floods it governs. The Ryu coils through the Japanese sky, rising from the sea in quiet majesty, disappearing into clouds that gather over rice paddies and temples. In its passage, it leaves traces not only in weather, but in human conscience, reminding communities that life's prosperity is inseparable from respect for natural and spiritual law. The Ryu is the subtle mediator, moving between worlds, teaching that survival, abundance, and harmony are inseparable from the flow of energy. Unseen, ungraspable, and yet utterly real, fishermen, farmers, poets, and pilgrims all feel its influence, whether in the reflection of sunlight upon water, the hush before a storm, or the gentle tilt of bamboo under wind. The Yang rises over Korea's mountains and rivers, its horned head cutting into dawn light, eyes reflecting both eternity and immediacy. In legend, it guides water away from villages to protect life, and yet its influence is more than physical. It is moral, ethical, a constant teaching that power must be tempered by virtue, that foresight and humility are as vital as courage and strength. The Yang moves in rhythm with the world, its undulations echoing the currents of rivers. The turning of the seasons and the cycles of human effort. In every scale, every ripple, every coiled form, it embodies the principle that life flows in patterns larger than any individual, and that prosperity arises from alignment, not conquest. Across these lands, dragons transcend their physical forms to become metaphors for consciousness itself. The coiling of their bodies mirrors the inner spiral of thought, emotion, and awareness. Their ascent through clouds and storms reflects the rising of insight from the murk of ignorance. Their breath, whether gentle mist or torrential rain, is the invisible energy, ki, that animates all life. In contemplating a dragon, one contemplates not a creature separate from oneself, but the vast, flowing forces that sustain existence. The interplay of light and shadow, the rhythm of water and wind, the infinite possibilities of action and consequence. The pearl held within the dragon's claw is the focal point of this reflection. It is wisdom crystallized, a concentrated spark of insight, a luminous core that cannot be possessed, but can be observed and approached with reverence. In chasing the pearl, dragons and humans alike are engaged in the same pursuit, the relentless search for understanding, balance, and alignment. The pearl is not a destination. It is a guidepost along the spiraling path of growth, an emblem of the subtle yet inexhaustible energy that courses through the universe and through the human spirit. To witness it is to see possibility itself, a mirror of the infinite. In art, the dragon's presence is simultaneously decorative and didactic. Temples carved with lung dragons coiling across roofs and columns are not merely visually striking. They encode lessons in balance, authority, and cosmic harmony. Japanese shrines depict Ryu weaving through beams and arches, embodying the invisible currents of energy that sustain both nature and human society. Korean palaces feature Yong twisting along murals and gates, a reminder that vigilance, virtue, and alignment with natural law are inseparable. Across centuries, the dragon's image remains constant, a bridge between the seen and unseen, the temporal and eternal, the human and the cosmic. The festivals dedicated to dragons crystallize this relationship into collective experience. Dragon boat races in China, complete with synchronized paddling and pounding drums, are simultaneously a reenactment of myth, a celebration of community, and a meditation on flow and harmony. Ryu festivals in Japan and Yong celebrations in Korea are imbued with the same principle, that prosperity, safety, and spiritual fulfillment are inseparable from respect for forces larger than oneself. In every dance, every ritual offering, every carefully measured movement, humans align themselves with the dragon's rhythm, momentarily coexisting with the infinite. Philosophically, the dragon teaches patience, humility, and reverence. It is the embodiment of principles that no edict can enforce and no conquest can command. Power must be tempered by wisdom. Abundance must be sought through alignment. Understanding emerges only through attentiveness to the currents of life. The dragon's mystery is its lesson, that true mastery is not domination, but attunement, that the sublime is not controlled, but experienced, that awe is not merely emotion, but recognition of one's place within a larger, interconnected order. Psychologically, the dragon functions as a mirror of human aspiration. Its coiling motion reflects the spiraling path of personal growth. Its breath mirrors the flow of consciousness itself. Its eyes reveal depth, awareness, and clarity. In dreams, in meditation, in the quiet observation of nature, the dragon whispers the same message across centuries. Cultivate patience, act with integrity, seek alignment, honor the invisible, and respect the vastness that surrounds you. The dragon's lesson is both intimate and universal, personal and cosmic. Modern culture continues to honor and reinterpret this timeless presence. Animated films, literature, and video games depict dragons in fantastical form, yet the echoes of the Lung, Ryu, and Yong remain unmistakable. They appear as guides, guardians, and symbols of harmony, their ancient lessons translated into new narratives. Festivals continue, rituals endure, and the dragon's essence, the flow of energy, the pursuit of balance, the interplay of power and wisdom, persists in the consciousness of those who seek meaning, beauty, and connection in the modern world. In the grandest sense, dragons embody the tension between the finite and the infinite. They remind humanity that life is vast, complex, and interconnected, that the forces which govern rivers, storms, and mountains are the same that guide hearts, communities, and civilizations. To witness a dragon is to witness the interplay of creation itself, the spiral of existence that flows outward and inward, visible and invisible, known and unknowable. And still, the dragon remains elusive. Its form shifts with the clouds, its breath merges with the wind, its movement is mirrored in rivers and seas. It is at once everywhere and nowhere, present and intangible. To approach the dragon is to confront both the majesty of the cosmos and the depths of the self, to recognize that the boundary between observer and observed is permeable, that wisdom and mystery are inseparable, and that the universe, like the dragon, moves in patterns beyond simple comprehension. In this eternal coiling between the visible and the infinite, dragons endure, They teach us not merely how to govern or survive, but how to perceive, how to aspire, how to flow. They embody the sublime, awe, mystery, and the possibility of alignment with forces far larger than ourselves. They are teachers, guides, and companions across the span of history, across rivers and seas, across mountains and skies. Even now, their presence persists. In the rush of wind through bamboo, in the curve of a river under moonlight, in the rise of clouds over the horizon. The Lung, Ryu, and Yang move silently alongside humanity, reminding us that life is a dance of energy and form, that wisdom is discerned not through conquest, but through attunement, and that the pursuit of understanding is as endless and fluid as the dragon's flight. In every reflection, every shadow, every glimmer of movement across water or stone, the dragon whispers its eternal message. Existence is boundless. Life is interconnected. Power must be tempered by wisdom, and the unseen currents that guide the world are as real as the hands that build, the feet that walk, and the hearts that seek meaning. The dragon endures because it is not only myth, not only symbol, not only legend. It is the rhythm of life, the pulse of the universe, the embodiment of awe itself. Its coils stretch across centuries. Its breath moves through civilizations. Its gaze penetrates the ordinary to reveal the extraordinary. And in its silent, magnificent presence, we are reminded of a simple, profound truth, that the dragon is eternal, not because it conquers, but because it teaches, inspires, and endures within the hearts, minds, and consciousness of all who behold it. Across continents, across oceans, across the corridors of time, the dragon persists. Its forms change, its stories evolve, yet its essence remains constant. A bridge between worlds, between human and divine, between the tangible and the ineffable. From the Lung coiling above Chinese rivers, to the Ryu gliding through Japanese skies, from the Yang guarding Korean mountains, to the fire-breathing dragons of Western legend. These creatures inhabit not merely the imagination, but the very fabric of human consciousness. They are teachers, symbols, guardians, and mirrors of the eternal questions. What is power? What is wisdom? What is our place in the vast, unfolding tapestry of existence? In the West, dragons often embody conflict, guardianship, and the primal confrontation between human courage and the unknown. Smaug slumbers atop mountains of treasure, fierce and solitary, demanding both valor and cunning to confront. In medieval tales, knights and heroes face dragons not merely to slay them, but to confront their own fears, desires, and limits. The Western dragon is externalized challenge, a symbol of chaos and conquest, of mortality and the hunger for mastery. Its fire consumes, its wings dominate, its presence demands action. Yet in the East, dragons offer a complementary vision. The Lung, Ryu, and Yang are not adversaries but guides, not destroyers but facilitators of harmony. They teach that power is not seized but aligned with, that wisdom is not enforced but discovered, that prosperity arises not from domination but from balance. They are flowing forces, coiling through the world, shaping rain, rivers, and seasons, guiding human ambition toward virtue, teaching the quiet art of attunement with the invisible currents of life. And in this contrast lies the profundity of the dragon as a universal symbol. It embodies both the external and internal, the challenge and the guide, the fearsome and the benevolent, the human and the divine. Across cultures, the dragon persists because it encapsulates the eternal tension of existence, the play between our desire for mastery and our need for humility, between chaos and order, between mortality and the infinite. Dragons are also mirrors of imagination itself. To conjure a dragon is to confront the limits of what can be seen, held, or understood. Their very form resists simplicity: a serpent's body, a bird's wings, a lion's claws, scales shimmering like molten light. They inhabit the threshold between the known and the unknown, between the finite and the infinite. Artists, writers, poets, and philosophers have long recognized that in dragons dwell the paradox of reality itself, creatures at once fantastical and inevitable, mythic and archetype, terrifying and sublime. In festivals and rituals, dragons remain living presences. Their motion carries centuries of human devotion. Their breath recalls the unseen currents of rivers and wind. Their gaze reflects both the divine and the human yearning for understanding. In East Asia, dragon boat races, temple dances, and festival parades are not mere celebrations. They are acts of alignment, invitations to enter into a dialogue with forces larger than oneself. In the West, dragon stories, games, and literature engage the human psyche, encouraging confrontation with fear, ambition, and the unknown. Across these expressions, the dragon remains a teacher, a guide, a mirror, a spark of awe that persists in consciousness. Yet beyond culture, geography, or time, dragons embody the principle that the universe itself is alive with mystery. The Lung, Ryu, and Yang flow through water, wind, and cloud. Smaug sleeps atop his treasure hoard. Leviathans coil beneath oceans of imagination. In each case, the dragon reminds humanity that the world is more vast, more intricate, and more wondrous than immediate perception allows. To see a dragon is to glimpse the sublime, the boundary of knowledge and the pulse of the infinite. Philosophically, the dragon bridges interior and exterior realms. The Lung's coils reflect the mind's spirals. The Ryu's passage mirrors the flow of attention and awareness. The Yang's guidance embodies the moral alignment necessary for human flourishing. In Western stories, dragons externalize the trials of courage, patience, and cleverness. Together, these portrayals suggest a universal truth. Dragons in every culture teach us to navigate life's complexities, to confront both the world and ourselves with awareness, humility, and imagination. In contemporary life, dragons continue to inspire. They soar across screens, leap from pages, and ripple through the collective imagination. They appear in novels, films, video games, and digital art. Their forms transformed, but their essence unchanged. They remind us that the pursuit of understanding, the engagement with power and mystery, the reverence for forces beyond control, these are eternal aspects of the human journey. Dragons endure because they speak to the deepest parts of the psyche, the parts attuned to wonder, awe, and the search for meaning. Ultimately, dragons are not merely creatures of myth. They are symbols of humanity's most enduring aspirations: the courage to face the unknown, the wisdom to live in harmony with forces larger than oneself, the reverence for the unseen, the pursuit of balance between power and virtue. They are teachers of awe, guides to mystery, mirrors reflecting both our limitations and our potential. In their scales glint the patterns of the cosmos. In their breath flows the invisible currents of life. In their eyes rests the eternal question: how shall we live? How shall we act? How shall we align ourselves with the infinite? And so, as rivers flow, storms gather, clouds twist, and winds rise, dragons remain. Not confined to stories, not limited to art, not bound by culture or era. They coil through the imagination, the psyche, and the world itself, eternal in presence, infinite in meaning. They are the pulse of myth and the rhythm of life, the embodiment of mystery and the enduring call to wonder. In the final reckoning, the dragon is everywhere, in the rain that nourishes fields, in the wind that bends bamboo, in the stories we tell, in the dreams we dream, in the courage we summon, in the wisdom we seek. It is at once within and beyond, teacher and companion, adversary and guide. The dragon reminds us that life is vast, complex, and infinitely more wondrous than we can imagine. It whispers across centuries, across oceans, across cultures, and into the very heartbeat of humanity. Now let us cross the world. Let us pass beyond the rising mists of the east, where dragons dance through cloud and rain, and follow the slow turn of the earth toward colder winds, darker forests, and older fears. The same creature that once ruled the skies of Asia as a symbol of harmony and divine power would take on new shapes in the minds of another world, the world of Europe. Here, the dragon's nature would twist and harden. Its benevolence burned away in the fires of a different kind of dream. For in the West, the dragon became the shadow of the soul itself. The journey begins with the whisper of stories told beside flickering hearts, tales carried across generations, etched into parchment and song. They tell of creatures vast and ancient, whose wings could blot out the sun, whose breath could consume forests and cities alike. These dragons did not bring rain or renewal. They brought fire. They did not guard the order of the cosmos. They embodied the chaos beyond it. In them, fear found its perfect form, scaled, winged, and hungry. It is a curious thing how a symbol can cross mountains and oceans and yet be reborn in the image of the people who imagine it. Where the Eastern dragon coiled through the heavens as a bridge between elements, the Western dragon burrowed into the earth, hoarding gold and secrets, curling itself around the material and mortal. The air it breathed was smoke, not mist. The light it emitted was not enlightenment, but flame. In the Western mind, dragons became the incarnation of excess, of greed, of pride, of wrath. They were chaos given flesh, the primal force that civilization, faith, and valor were built to contain. And yet, even as they burned villages and devoured kingdoms in legend, they also beckoned. They offered humanity a reflection of its own hidden hunger, the desire to possess, to dominate, to accumulate power. To face a dragon was to face the self, the part that could consume everything and call it triumph. The medieval imagination was steeped in a world where good and evil were not merely choices, but cosmic realities. The church spires rose toward heaven, while shadows clung to the edges of forests and caverns. In that shadow, the dragon dwelled. Its form appeared in illuminated manuscripts, its wings curling around the edges of holy text, as though seeking to consume the word itself. Its eyes stared from the carvings of cathedrals, from the edges of maps marked "Here be dragons," as if to remind all who looked upon them that beyond the known world lay mystery and danger. The Western dragon's origins stretch deep into pre-Christian myth. The ancient Greeks told of Python, the great serpent slain by Apollo at Delphi, its death giving birth to the sacred oracle that would guide kings and heroes. The Norse spoke of Fafnir, once a man, transformed by greed into a monstrous serpent, guarding a cursed hoard of gold. In the shadows of Roman legend slithered the Hydra, its many heads sprouting anew each time one was cut off, a symbol of evil that could never truly die, only multiply. Each of these stories planted a seed, a fragment of the dragon's nature that would grow and evolve through the centuries. When Christianity spread through Europe, it gathered these fragments and forged them into a moral symbol. The dragon became the ultimate adversary, the embodiment of Satan himself. In the book of Revelation, the great red dragon rises, sweeping stars from the sky, waging war upon heaven. This vision burned itself into the imagination of medieval Europe. From that moment on, dragons ceased to be creatures of nature and became forces of moral and spiritual significance. They were no longer simply monsters. They were the face of evil, the thing to be defeated so that light might prevail. And thus into the story stepped the dragon slayer. The archetype was ancient even before it wore a Christian face. in every culture, there is a hero who confronts the serpent, the chaos bringer, the devourer. But in the West, this confrontation took on a distinct and sacred form. The Dragon Slayer was not merely a warrior. He was the instrument of divine will. His sword gleamed with righteousness. His battle was not for survival alone, but for salvation. To slay the dragon was to restore balance to the world, to prove that faith, courage, and virtue could triumph over corruption, greed, and terror. The most enduring of these tales is that of St. George, a soldier, a martyr, a saint. His story ripples through centuries of European art, prayer, and imagination. The legend tells of a city terrorized by a dragon that demanded tribute, first livestock, then the people themselves. When the king's daughter was chosen to be the next offering, George appeared, armed with faith and steel. He faced the dragon, invoking the cross, and slew it. The beast's blood soaked the earth. The people converted. The city was saved. It is a story that is at once simple and infinite. For in that act, one man facing a creature of pure destruction, the Western mind found its central image of moral struggle. The dragon was no longer just a beast. It was the embodiment of all that must be overcome: sin, chaos, ignorance, and the seductive pull of darkness. The Slayer was humanity at its best, the image of virtue given form. Yet beneath this clear moral structure lies a deeper resonance, one that connects the story of St. George to something far older. The dragon that guards the treasure or the maiden is not merely evil. It is the gatekeeper of transformation. To defeat it is to cross a threshold, to move from innocence into mastery, from fear into understanding. The Slayer's victory is not just the defeat of darkness, but the awakening of light within himself. Other tales echo this same truth in their own ways. Beowulf's final battle against the dragon that guards an ancient hoard is not only a fight for his kingdom, but a confrontation with mortality itself. The dragon's fire consumes the aged hero even as his sword pierces the beast's heart. Both die, locked in a final embrace of destruction and redemption. In that moment, the dragon is both enemy and mirror, both death and immortality. Across centuries, these stories accumulated, layer upon layer, until the Western dragon became one of the most potent symbols in human imagination, a creature that embodied the totality of fear, greed, and darkness that civilization sought to transcend. Its wings spread across art, literature, and theology. Its shadow fell upon castles, cathedrals, and the dreams of those who lived beneath them. Yet, for all its terror, the dragon also inspired. Artists painted it in gold and crimson. Sculptors carved it into stone. Bards sang of its might. Knights sought it. Scholars studied it. Kings emblazoned it upon their banners. The dragon was the enemy, yes, but it was also the measure of heroism. Without it, there was no glory. Without it, there was no story. To look into the eyes of a Western dragon was to confront the extremes of existence itself. Power without compassion. Desire without restraint. Immortality without wisdom. And yet, within that darkness lay a spark of something more. The recognition that what we fear most often reflects what we desire most deeply. For who among us does not long to soar, to command, to possess? The dragon's fire burns in the human heart as well as in its lair. And so the dragon and the dragon slayer are bound together eternally. They are not opposites but reflections of one another, two halves of a single mythic truth. The hero cannot exist without the monster, and the monster cannot exist without the hero. In their endless dance of fire and steel, of shadow and light, humanity found the perfect mirror of its own duality. The Western dragon, born of fear and fascination, rose from the depths of the collective imagination to become the ultimate symbol of what lies beyond the known, the frontier of courage, the abyss of greed, the horizon of transformation. Its roar echoes through centuries, through the stories that shaped kingdoms, through the dreams that shaped men. It is the creature that must be faced, defeated, understood, and finally, perhaps, forgiven. In the Book of Revelation, the dragon rises from the abyss, red as blood, its 7 heads crowned with blasphemy. It sweeps a third of the stars from the sky, waging war upon heaven. This image, more than any other, would shape the Western soul's understanding of evil. The dragon became not just a creature of chaos, but the very face of opposition to divine order, an apocalyptic force whose defeat would herald redemption. Every fresco, every illuminated manuscript, every sermon echoed this same cosmic drama. Priests thundered from pulpits of stone, warning their flocks that the dragon's shadow lay everywhere, in greed, in lust, in pride, in the yearning for power and gold. The creature of scales and smoke became the emblem of the fallen world, the whisperer in the heart, the darkness beneath the shining armor of faith. And yet, in those same churches and monasteries, artisans painted dragons with exquisite beauty, curling along the edges of sacred pages, dancing in colors of blue, gold, and crimson. There was terror in their eyes, yes, but also majesty. The monks who copied holy texts by candlelight seemed to know what their theology sometimes forgot, that the dragon was part of the divine design, that even darkness, in its way, reveals the shape of the light. In medieval cosmology, the world was a fragile balance, heaven above, hell below, and between them, humanity, ever precarious. The dragon occupied that lower realm, coiling through fire and brimstone, waiting for the souls who strayed too far. Its roar was the thunder of damnation, its wings the storm of divine judgment. And yet, stories of its presence persisted, not as mere warnings, but as reminders that courage and faith must be renewed daily, that light must always be chosen, never assumed. But the dragon's presence was not confined to the pulpit or the page. It haunted the margins of geography itself. Medieval maps, those hand-drawn mirrors of the known and the unknown, often marked the edges of the world with a simple, chilling phrase: Hic sunt dracones, here be dragons. The unknown was not empty. It was alive, breathing, dangerous. To venture beyond the safe boundaries of the world was to risk not only one's life, but one's soul. And yet, people ventured anyway. Explorers sailed past the limits of certainty. Knights rode into dark forests in search of glory. Monks wrestled with doubt as fiercely as any warrior with sword in hand. The dragon, in this sense, became a test of faith, a challenge that called humanity to courage, to endurance, to trust in something greater than fear. The imagery of the dragon infiltrated every layer of medieval thought. In sermons, it was the devil. In bestiaries, it was nature's greatest predator. In dreams and visions, it was the shadow of the self. To see a dragon was to see one's own capacity for sin reflected back in terrible beauty. Its scales shimmered like temptation itself, alluring, irresistible, deadly. The theologians and poets of the Middle Ages often saw this duality clearly. They spoke of dragons as both symbols of evil and mirrors of the fallen human condition. To overcome the dragon was to overcome the self, to master desire, pride, and greed. The battle between saint and serpent was thus not only a mythic spectacle, but a moral allegory played out in every soul. It was in this crucible of belief that the Dragon Slayer's legend took on sacred form. St. George's victory was retold not simply as an act of courage, but as a metaphor for spiritual triumph. The dragon that menaced the city was the embodiment of sin, and the maiden it threatened was the pure soul of humanity. George's lance was faith itself, piercing through deception and despair. Each retelling transformed the myth into liturgy, each image into catechism. But alongside this sacred imagery, another layer of the dragon myth persisted. Older, more primal, harder to contain. In the quiet corners of folklore, in the songs of wandering minstrels, and the stories whispered to children by firelight, dragons retained a strange allure. They were monsters, yes, but magnificent ones. Creatures of ancient power, guardians of secrets buried deep beneath the earth. Their treasure hoards shimmered not only with gold, but with the mystery of forbidden knowledge. These folk dragons did not always fit the neat moral patterns of the church. Sometimes they were dangerous but not evil, destructive but not demonic. They were forces of nature, like storms or earthquakes, beyond human control, but not inherently malevolent. In these stories, the Slayer's victory was not a moral conquest, but a struggle for survival, for understanding, for balance between humanity and the wild. And so, through centuries of storytelling, the Western dragon evolved in two directions at once, one holy, one human. In the illuminated halls of cathedrals, it became the devil's image, a warning carved into stone. But in the hearts of the people, it remains something more, a creature of wonder, mystery, and the deep earth, feared and admired in equal measure. Perhaps that is why the dragon endures, even in a world far removed from those medieval shadows. It carries within it the memory of humanity's eternal conflict, the longing for transcendence and the gravity of the flesh, the pull of faith and the lure of desire. To the medieval mind, the dragon was not just an external enemy, but the sum of all inner battles, the restless spirit of temptation, the hunger for more than one is given, the fire that both destroys and illuminates. It is telling that the dragon, though condemned, was never forgotten. Even as Europe's faith grew more rational, its art more human, its philosophy more measured, the image of the dragon remained. It had coiled itself too deeply into the imagination to ever be cast out completely. It was too much a part of the human story, a reminder that even in the most devout, there burns a spark of rebellion, a fascination with what lies beyond the walls of heaven. And so, as knights rode forth under banners of saints and kings, as poets sang of valor and virtue, as monks copied the scriptures that warned against sin and hubris, the dragon watched, from the edge of the world, from the depths of the subconscious, from the spaces between faith and fear. It was the shadow that made the light more visible, the adversary that gave meaning to the hero's courage. For every generation that claimed to have conquered it, the dragon returned, in dreams, in stories, in the quiet places of the soul where mystery still breathes. It is there still, in the coiling smoke of imagination, waiting. Darkness falls over the medieval world like a cloak woven of faith and fear. The cathedral bells toll across the valley, their echoes mingling with the wind and the murmur of prayer. In this age of saints and sinners, when every sunrise feels like a new page in the great book of salvation, the dragon slumbers, not in the wilderness alone, but within the pages of the Bible, within sermons, within the imagination of every man and woman who kneels in the candlelight. Here, the dragon is not a beast to be merely slain. It is the living symbol of the adversary himself. It is Satan, the ancient serpent, the deceiver. Its wings are the darkness that seeks to smother divine light. Its breath is the temptation that lures the soul away from grace. And in the flickering glow of stained glass and scripture, this creature takes on an eternal weight. It is not simply a monster of flesh and fire. It is the embodiment of all that must be resisted. The long night of the Middle Ages began, slowly, to pale. Bells still tolled, and prayers still rose, but on the wind came a new kind of sound, the scratch of quills that questioned, the hum of instruments measuring the heavens, the first tremor of a thought that dared to look at the world and ask not what must we believe, but what is truly there. And as the world awoke to itself, the dragon, so long chained to the stone altars of fear, stirred again. In the Renaissance, the dragon found itself drawn not in the margins of apocalypse, but in the notebooks of dreamers. Leonardo sketched it as anatomy and allegory, wings spread in a geometry of possibility. Painters filled their canvases with coiled serpents and shimmering scales, not to warn, but to wonder. The beast, once condemned as the devil's shadow, was now studied as part of creation's mystery. Human eyes turned from heaven toward the world itself. And even the dragon, creature of chaos, was invited back into the light of curiosity. In alchemy, that strange marriage of science and sorcery, the dragon took on a subtler meaning. It became the Ouroboros, the serpent devouring its own tail, eternal cycle of death and rebirth. Alchemists saw in its endless circle the rhythm of transformation, the secret of turning base matter into gold, of refining the spirit through the furnace of experience. The dragon was no longer merely to be slain, it was to be understood, even embraced. It was the fire that purified, the darkness that contained light. To face it was to begin the great work, the transmutation not only of metal, but of the soul. This new vision of the dragon mirrored the changing vision of humanity itself. As explorers crossed oceans and scientists peered into stars, the boundaries of the possible expanded. The dragon, too, expanded, its nature shifting from moral lesson to metaphor of wonder. It became a symbol of imagination itself, the uncharted depths of the human spirit. Yet within that wonder, an echo of the old terror remained. Renaissance Europe was still haunted by plague, by war, by the fragile knowledge that enlightenment could flicker out as quickly as a candle in the wind. The dragon, in this sense, was never truly gone. It was merely transformed. In its wings, artists and thinkers saw both the peril and promise of human ambition, the same flame that could illuminate or destroy. When the Enlightenment dawned and the age of reason took firm hold, dragons began to retreat from the realm of belief into the realm of myth. Naturalists cataloged creatures of flesh and bone. Dragons did not fit. The great encyclopedias, the scientific treatises, the museums of Europe, all sought to order the world, to separate the real from the imagined. Dragons, banished from reality, took refuge in the imagination. But in that exile, they became immortal. For in losing their place in nature, they gained dominion over the mind. The philosophers, who sought to illuminate the world with reason, could never quite extinguish the glow of myth. In the deep recesses of the human heart, the dragon still waited, now as symbol of the mysteries that reason could not yet reach. It became the embodiment of everything still untamed. Passion, creativity, the abyss of the unknown. Writers began to rediscover this new dragon, half beast and half idea. In epics and poems, it coiled once again through the corridors of imagination. Milton's Satan carried the echo of the dragon's pride, soaring through the fires of hell with wings of defiance. The Romantic poets, centuries later, would see in that same defiance the beauty of the storm, the grandeur of rebellion. The dragon, long condemned, now whispered to humanity's longing for freedom, to its hunger for the sublime. And so, as reason built its empires of thought, the dragon followed, silent but watchful. It no longer guarded gold beneath the mountains. It guarded the treasures of mystery itself. Whenever human certainty grew too bright, too proud, too absolute, a shadow passed, a flicker of wings in the corner of the mind, and the old creature reminded us that there are still depths we do not know. By the close of the Enlightenment, Europe had charted the globe, split the atom of superstition, and declared the universe a machine of laws. But in the art and literature that flourished beneath that proclamation, dragons returned as symbols of what could not be mechanized: imagination, awe, the soul's hunger for something beyond measurement. They roared in the dreams of painters, poets, and composers who sensed that logic alone could not contain the infinite. The dragon had changed its form again, no longer the monster of sin, nor yet the saint's adversary. It had become a paradox, the guardian of mystery in an age of certainty. Its breath was the fire of inspiration, its wings the shadow that kept the light from blinding us. But the old fears did not vanish overnight. The Renaissance mind was a bridge between two worlds, one rooted in faith, the other in reason. The dragon still crouched at the edges of that bridge, its breath rising between certainty and awe. In one moment, it was painted beneath the hoof of St. George, defeated once again for God and glory. In the next, it appeared beside angels and nymphs, a symbol of passion, of the untamed forces of life. Where once it had been evil incarnate, it now became complexity itself. The scholars who mapped the heavens began to map the earth as well. They charted coastlines, mountain ranges, untraveled seas, and though their instruments grew more precise, their imagination still trembled before the unknown. Dragons still curled upon the parchment where the mapmaker's knowledge ended. The phrase, "Here be dragons," lingered, not as theology, but as poetry, a confession that, even in an age of reason, mystery had not yet been exiled. The 19th century opened like the slow unfurling of a dream. The world was changing faster than any myth could keep pace with. Steam hissed through iron veins. Cities rose from stone and soot. The pulse of progress throbbed beneath every invention. Yet even as engines thundered and telescopes reached for the stars, the human soul, restless, yearning, haunted, still turned inward. It still dreamed of wings and fire. It still needed dragons. The dragon, that ancient creature of shadow and flame, found itself reborn in an age both fascinated and frightened by its own power. The Romantic poets, weary of reason's relentless glare, sought the wild and the untamed. They wandered through mountains and ruins, seas and storms, searching for the sublime, that feeling of awe that dwarfs the self and reminds it of mystery. And there, in the sublime's shadow, dragons stirred again. In painting and music, too, dragons whispered. Artists like William Blake saw visions where myth and faith intertwined, where the serpent of Eden became not merely the tempter, but the spark of knowledge itself. His dragons were creatures of both terror and revelation, proof that within every act of defiance lies the seed of awakening. In his etchings, they coiled around the boundaries between heaven and hell, good and evil, creation and destruction. To Blake, as to the poets of his time, dragons were not demons, but paradoxes, symbols of the eternal dance between order and chaos that gives birth to life itself. But if the Romantic dragon was the symbol of inner fire, the Victorian dragon was something else entirely. The 19th century was an age of empires, and with empire came maps, colonies, power, and anxiety. Dragons returned to those maps again, not as beings of myth, but as metaphors for the unknown lands that lay beyond Europe's reach. In the parlors of London and the lecture halls of Oxford, the dragon became shorthand for mystery itself, for the places civilization had not yet conquered. Explorers described strange beasts in the depths of Africa, fossils of creatures that once ruled the earth. Science began to awaken ancient bones. The first dinosaurs were unearthed, their massive skeletons reconstructed in iron and plaster. And when Victorians stood beneath those monstrous forms, seeing teeth as long as swords and skulls as wide as a man's height, something ancient stirred in them. The dragon, it seemed, had been real all along. These discoveries blurred the line between myth and history. The dragon was no longer only a moral symbol or a poetic metaphor. It was a scientific possibility. The fossils of prehistoric reptiles were hailed as proof of a living past that echoed humanity's oldest stories. Museums became cathedrals of awe. Families filed through the halls of natural history. their eyes wide as they gazed upon skeletons that looked exactly like the dragons their ancestors had feared or worshipped. The myth and the fossil fused into a single revelation: that imagination, somehow, had remembered truth. In literature, dragons adapted to this new landscape of wonder and empire. They began to appear not only in fables or legends, but in the emerging genre of fantasy, stories that sought to bridge myth and modernity. Early writers of the 19th century, from George MacDonald to William Morris, began weaving dragons into moral tales and allegories. MacDonald's dragons were not mere villains. They were reflections of human folly, greed, and redemption. In his works, as in the hearts of his readers, the dragon once again became both monster and teacher. Even the Victorian moralists, so concerned with order and restraint, could not entirely resist the dragon's allure. It haunted their art, their architecture, their ornamentation. Gargoyles with scaled bodies clung to the corners of cathedrals and universities. Dragon motifs wound through iron gates and stained glass. The dragon became the guardian of knowledge and the symbol of power, a reminder that beneath the polished surface of civilization still burned the wild heat of creation. But perhaps the most profound shift of all came through imagination itself. The Western world, now armed with science and empire, had seemingly banished mystery from its borders. Yet the more it sought to explain the world, the more it longed for what could not be explained. The dragon returned to fill that void, a living emblem of what reason could not tame, what progress could not replace. It represented the ancient truth that awe and knowledge are not enemies, but partners, that discovery is meaningful only when it leads us to wonder. And then, quietly, in the early 20th century, something remarkable happened. The dragon took flight again, not as symbol or sermon, but as story. From the ashes of myth and the dust of ancient bones, new tales began to rise. Stories of kingdoms and quests, of heroes and worms, of courage and greed. These were not the dragons of theology, nor the metaphors of philosophy, but living, breathing creatures of imagination. They soared first through the words of authors who had grown up in the twilight between worlds. Writers who knew both the ancient power of myth and the rational clarity of modernity. Men like J.R.R. Tolkien, C.S. Lewis, and later their countless successors. For Tolkien especially, the dragon was no mere monster. It was the shadow of greed, the echo of corruption, the whisper of pride. Smaug, the golden dragon of The Hobbit, was at once ancient and modern, a creature of pure avarice, guarding not just treasure, but the very idea of possession. His voice was smooth, intelligent, persuasive. His evil was not madness, but charm. He was in essence the perfect mirror of the age that birthed him. Smaug was the heir to every dragon that came before him. The Serpent of Eden, the Hoarder Fafnir, the apocalyptic beast of Revelation. Yet he was also something new. A creature of human depth, as psychological as he was mythological. When Bilbo Baggins crept into his lair, trembling before the mountain of gold, he was not simply facing a monster, but confronting the soul of the modern world, the lure of wealth, the cost of desire, the peril of awakening ancient power for personal gain. Through Smaug and his kin, the dragon entered a new chapter, not as the enemy of faith or the relic of fear, but as the eternal question: what do we worship, and what do we become when we do? By the end of the 19th century and the dawn of the 20th, dragons were no longer just part of history's tapestry. They were alive again in imagination, soaring through stories that would define modern myth itself. The industrial age had tried to bury them beneath iron and reason, but imagination had dug them up again, like bones gleaming in the sunlight. The dragon had survived the march of progress, the rise of science, the shift from faith to fact. It had survived because it was never truly a creature of the world. It was a creature of the soul, Wherever awe exists, wherever the unknown calls, wherever humanity seeks meaning in the vastness of existence, the dragon waits, still coiled, still breathing, still dreaming. To the romantics, the dragon was not a monster to be slain, but a mirror of the human condition. It was the symbol of passion unbound, of imagination untamed, of nature's raw majesty. When Shelley wrote of Prometheus defying the gods, when Byron roamed like a fallen angel through his verses, when Coleridge conjured albatrosses, specters, and spirits of the deep, the dragon was there in spirit, the emblem of forces too vast for reason to tame. The 20th century opened with fire and noise. Wars tore across the continents, machines flew, cities glowed brighter than stars. Humanity, for the first time, wielded powers that once belonged only to gods and monsters. And so, as it always has, an imagination reached for an image vast enough to hold its fear and its wonder. It reached for the dragon. When Tolkien's The Hobbit appeared in 1937, it felt both ancient and utterly new. In Smaug's cave, readers found not a relic of superstition, but a living emblem of the modern world. His lair glittered like a vault of industry. His arrogance echoed the voice of empire. His ruin came from his own greed. Yet there was majesty in him too. Intelligence, eloquence, the lonely grandeur of a creature that knows it is the last of its kind. Smaug burned with the same paradox that had haunted every age before. Terror and beauty bound together in flame. Animation gave them grace. The Reluctant Dragon, Pete's Dragon, and later, How to Train Your Dragon reshaped the myth into tenderness. The fire remained, but it warmed instead of burned. The monster had become mentor, sometimes even friend. The transformation felt inevitable, as though centuries of fear had ripened into understanding. The Western Dragon, once the adversary of saints, now folded its wings around children. Its scales still gleamed, but its eyes held empathy. Yet the darker dragons did not vanish. In the late 20th century, as fantasy grew into a global language, they returned more fearsome than ever. In Dungeons and Dragons, in video games and epics spun across screens, dragons re-emerged as tests of courage and cunning. Guardians of treasure, symbols of absolute power. They could be slain, bargained with, revered, or feared. What mattered was the confrontation itself, the eternal echo of St. George raising his lance. The modern age gave that confrontation new meaning. To face a dragon was to face the structures of power themselves, greed, tyranny, obsession. When the cameras turned toward the fiery skies of Game of Thrones, the dragon rose once more as an image of domination and desire. Daenerys Targaryen's dragons were not demons from hell, but weapons of liberation and destruction alike, embodiments of the truth that power untempered consumes both master and foe. Their flight was beauty, their fire was tragedy. The world watched them and understood. We have built our own dragons, forged from steel and flame, and we too ride upon their backs. Through all these retellings, a quiet evolution unfolded. The Western dragon began to reclaim what its Eastern kin had never lost, a measure of wisdom, a hint of divinity. The moral polarity of saint and serpent gave way to complexity. Dragons became characters with voices, motives, even souls. In literature, from Ursula Le Guin's Earthsea to Robin Hobb's Riverborn Dragons, they spoke of balance, of ancient memory, of the cost of forgetting the natural world. Their words were slow, resonant, filled with the weight of ages. They were not merely beasts, but archives of existence. Science, too, joined the chorus in its own way. Paleontology continued to unearth fossils that blurred myth and memory. Archaeology traced dragon legends along trade routes and fault lines. Psychology found in them archetypes of transformation and desire. Carl Jung saw the dragon as the shadow, the dark self that must be faced and integrated. To conquer it was not to kill it, but to know it. And thus, even in the laboratories and lecture halls of the 20th century, the dragon remained a symbol not of ignorance, but of the deep unconscious that reason could not extinguish. By the time the new millennium arrived, dragons had spread their wings across every medium known to art and technology. They roared from cinema screens, danced through pixels, soared across orchestral scores. They could be terrifying, adorable, tragic, divine. They could destroy a city or teach a child to fly. Humanity no longer needed to believe in dragons to feel them. They had become an emotional truth, an echo of awe that vibrated through every generation's dreams. And still, beneath all the spectacle, the old story endured. The dragon, whether blazing above Westeros or sleeping beneath Erebor, remained what it had always been, a question. What do we fear when we face the dragon? What do we desire when we seek its hoard? In the shimmer of its scales, we see our history, our wars, our empires, our inventions, our endless hunger for meaning. And in its eyes, we see ourselves, reflected in firelight, still searching. For the dragon has never truly been slain. It only changes shape, moving with us from cave to cathedral, from parchment to pixel, from myth to metaphor. It is the pulse of imagination itself, the reminder that every age, no matter how rational or advanced, still needs mystery. To tell a story of dragons is to confess that we still believe in something greater than ourselves. Danger and beauty entwined. The dream of flight above a world of fire. After Tolkien, dragons no longer belonged solely to myth. They became citizens of literature, film, and dream. Writers and filmmakers reforged them in every shape imaginable. Wise or wicked, comic or tragic, human or divine. Each new dragon reflected the century that made it. In the decades after the wars, when humanity struggled to reconcile progress with devastation, dragons often appeared as victims of their own might. Creatures hunted, misunderstood, or nearly extinct. They stood for the vanishing wild, for nature wounded by the machines of man. In stories whispered to children and screened in darkened theaters, dragons learned to speak not only fire, but compassion. They became companions to heroes, keepers of lost wisdom, bridges between the world that is and the world that might yet be saved. In the 21st century, dragons inhabit the world in ways their earliest storytellers could scarcely have imagined. They glide across screens, leap from pages, roar through speakers, and curl in the corners of our collective imagination. They are digital, literary, cinematic, even virtual. Yet in all these forms, they remain as alive as they were in the forests of medieval Europe or the mountains of mythic Asia. They are the echoes of humanity itself, scaled and winged, breathing fire and mystery into a world that has nearly exhausted its sense of wonder. Even as dragons take on these nuanced roles, their mythic weight persists. Paleontology continues to uncover the bones of creatures that echo the dragons of imagination. Massive reptiles, long extinct, whose very existence hints at the natural reality that may have inspired the myths. Anthropologists trace dragon legends across cultures, from Europe to Asia to the Americas, uncovering astonishing parallels. Winged or serpent-like beasts associated with power, danger, and awe. The dragon becomes not only a symbol of individual struggle, but a global reflection of human cognition, the need to shape meaning from the unknown, to tell stories about forces larger than ourselves. In film and literature, dragons now exist in dialogue with their eastern cousins. The awe of Smaug meets the wisdom of the lung. the terror of Fafnir finds resonance with the benevolence of Ryu. Creators deliberately draw on this shared mythic vocabulary, blending fire and cloud, treasure and river, greed and balance. Dragons have become bridges, not just between hero and monster, but between cultures, reminding audiences that the human impulse to imagine them is universal. Psychologically, dragons remain mirrors of the human soul. Jungian analysis casts them as archetypes of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we fear, desire, and struggle to integrate. To face a dragon, even in a story, is to confront our own ambition, our pride, our hunger, and our awe. To ride a dragon is to embrace the untamable, to align ourselves with forces that are larger, older, and more mysterious than the self. In this sense, dragons have always been moral and spiritual guides, regardless of whether they breathe fire or mist. Even in children's stories, dragons carry this weight, teaching lessons of courage, friendship, and responsibility. The playful dragons of animated films or novels are not trivial. They are vessels of emotional truth. The flame they breathe is imagination. The shadow they cast is wonder. Through them, the young learn to navigate fear, curiosity, and empathy. The very tools that once allowed knights to face monsters and emperors to revere the skies. In a globalized era, dragons now inhabit a shared cultural consciousness. A child in Tokyo can watch Daenerys's dragons and recognize echoes of Ryu and Lung in their flight. A reader in London can imagine Smaug and see in him the same coiled danger that inspired Viking and Norse tales centuries ago. The dragon has transcended borders, languages, and eras, emerging as a universal symbol of the human encounter with power, mystery, and beauty. And yet, for all this modern reinterpretation, the essence remains unchanged. Dragons are still ancient. They still evoke awe and fear. They still challenge and inspire. Across continents and millennia, from the rivers of China to the castles of Europe, they embody the same fundamental truths: that life is vast, complex, and often beyond comprehension. That courage is measured not only in combat, but in understanding. That beauty and danger are intertwined in ways that the mind alone cannot contain. In our age of science, progress, and technology, dragons persist because they remind us of what cannot be calculated or cataloged: mystery, imagination, and the eternal call to wonder. They are creatures of narrative, memory, and instinct, symbols that have survived every era because humanity cannot let them go. They live in stories because stories are where humanity meets the infinite, where fear meets courage, where desire meets responsibility. In this modern vision, dragons are no longer merely Western monsters or Eastern guides. They are global teachers, archetypal figures that speak across cultures. They are the embodiment of the unknown, the mirror of the soul, the fire that warms and warns. They remind us that we are small, that we are mortal, that the world is larger than our comprehension, and that in acknowledging this, we find the deepest form of freedom. The dragon, ever ancient, ever new, ever alive, waits still. It waits in the air above cities, in the pages of novels, in the dreams of children, in the shadows of forests and mountains, in the bones unearthed by curious hands, in the reflections of our own hearts. It whispers the eternal message: be bold, be aware, seek balance, honor the unknown, and never cease to wonder. Modern dragons, especially those of cinema and literature, reflect not only the old tensions of good and evil, but the new complexity of human experience. They are creatures of power and consequence, wisdom and instinct, beauty and terror intertwined. In Game of Thrones, Daenerys' dragons embody both creation and destruction, a reminder that power is never neutral. In Aragon and the Inheritance Cycle, Dragons are companions, mirrors, and guides, teaching empathy, patience, and courage. They are no longer purely adversaries. They are participants in the moral and emotional development of humanity, sometimes wiser than the humans themselves. Across the globe, across centuries, across cultures, dragons endure. They coil through rivers and soar above mountains. They breathe fire and mist. They guard treasures visible and invisible. From the Lung of China to the Ryu of Japan, from the Yong of Korea to Smaug and Fafnir, dragons occupy every corner of the human imagination. Yet their presence is more than mere coincidence. They are symbols of what humanity has always sought: understanding, power, courage, and awe. The Western dragon, in contrast, emerged as the ultimate adversary. Fire, greed, destruction. The dragon became the enemy to be overcome, the chaos to be mastered, the shadow to be faced. In Europe, the dragon was a measure of courage, a reflection of moral and spiritual conflict. St. George, Beowulf, Fafnir, and countless others embodied the archetype of the dragon slayer. Humanity confronting the overwhelming, the terrifying, the morally complex. Here, dragons taught lessons not through benevolence, but through confrontation, through struggle, through the trial of spirit and steel. Yet beneath these surface differences lies a profound unity. Both Eastern and Western dragons embody forces beyond the human, immense, often incomprehensible, always demanding respect. Both reflect our fears and aspirations, our understanding of power and responsibility, our relationship with nature, society, and ourselves. One guides, the other tests. One nurtures, the other challenges. One flows like water, the other burns like fire. Together, they illuminate the duality at the heart of human existence, the need to harmonize with the world, and the need to assert ourselves within it. Dragons are also mirrors of imagination itself. Across cultures, they blend the familiar with the fantastic. Serpents, lions, birds, clouds, fire. Their forms resist simplicity. Their scale exceeds comprehension. Their presence demands wonder. The lung's flowing coils and the western worm's massive wings are variations on a theme. Creatures that bridge the natural and supernatural, the tangible and the transcendent. They remind us that the human mind is capable of infinite invention, and that myth is not mere decoration, but a cognitive and emotional tool for grappling with the unknown. Moreover, dragons reflect the moral and philosophical concerns of the societies that imagine them. Eastern dragons, often associated with rulers and the heavens, emphasize balance, responsibility, and the wise exercise of power. Western dragons, often associated with hoarded treasure and fiery destruction, emphasize courage, ethical choice, and the confrontation with chaos and desire. In every case, the dragon becomes a lens through which humans examine their own virtues and vices, their own place in the cosmos, their own relationship to forces they cannot fully control. Modern media and storytelling continue to merge these traditions. Films, books, and games now depict dragons as both allies and adversaries, combining wisdom with danger, beauty with terror, intellect with instinct. They can teach, challenge, destroy, or protect. They are multidimensional, like the human experience itself. And in this synthesis, the dragon transcends cultural boundaries, becoming a universal emblem of imagination, morality, and awe. In psychology, the dragon retains its power as archetype. It represents the shadow, the unknown, the unintegrated forces within ourselves. To face a dragon is to confront fear, desire, pride, and potential. Whether in Eastern myths that guide humans toward harmony or Western myths that pit heroes against overwhelming peril, dragons remain reflections of our inner and outer struggles. They teach patience, courage, respect, wisdom, and humility. They are eternal mirrors, reflecting back not only the world, but ourselves. And so, the dragon endures because it embodies what humanity cannot abandon: the unknown, the sublime, the mysterious forces that shape life and imagination. It reminds us that the world is larger than our understanding, that power must be respected, that courage is tested, that wisdom is earned, and that awe is necessary for life to be lived fully. In rivers, in mountains, in pages, on screens, dragons continue to teach, challenge, and inspire. Across East and West, past and present, the dragon remains a bridge. It unites diverse cultures through a shared encounter with mystery. It links imagination and reality, fear and admiration, chaos and order, mortality and the infinite. It whispers across time. To live fully is to recognize the vastness of the world, to confront the unknown, and to remain ever vigilant, ever curious, ever capable of wonder. Dragons are not relics, nor are they mere fantasy. They are living symbols of the human journey, connecting us to our past, reflecting our present, and inspiring our future. They coil, they soar, they breathe fire and mist. They wait at the edge of perception, inviting us to see beyond ourselves. In every scale, every wing, every claw, they remind us that life is immense, dangerous, and beautiful, and that our encounter with the unknown is what gives existence its meaning. Across continents, across eras, across imagination, dragons remain, and in their eternal presence, we glimpse not only the mysteries of the world, but the depths of our own hearts, the reach of our courage, and the boundless potential of our wonder. To compare East and West is to see the spectrum of human engagement with mystery. The lung flows like water through Chinese myth, a benevolent guide, a bringer of rain, a symbol of cosmic balance. The Ryu and Yang share this grace, powerful yet kind, guardians of life, embodiments of wisdom that reward harmony with the world. They coiled above rivers, flew through clouds, and were honored in festivals because they reminded humanity of its place in the larger order, teaching respect, patience, and alignment with forces beyond human control. In the West, dragons embody struggle, challenge, and moral weight. They guard treasure, hoard knowledge, confront heroes, and demand courage. They are adversaries, mirrors of human desire, symbols of chaos and greed, but also catalysts of growth, transformation, and insight. Through them, humanity has explored the extremes of morality, courage, and consequence, learning that the true battle lies within as much as without. Yet in every age, dragons have remained more than symbols. They are the pulse of wonder itself, the echo of a question humans have asked for millennia. What lies beyond our understanding? What is powerful, terrifying, and beautiful in ways we cannot contain? What is worthy of awe, reverence, and respect? Dragons remind us that some mysteries cannot be tamed, only embraced. Modern storytelling merges these traditions seamlessly. In cinema, literature, and games, dragons are both guides and adversaries, embodying wisdom, ferocity, empathy, and peril. They teach respect for power, humility in the face of the unknown, and courage in moments of choice. They are avatars of imagination, capable of inspiring fear, admiration, and wonder simultaneously. Their presence reminds us that no matter how advanced humanity becomes, the unknown remains, vast, eternal, and sublime. Dragons are mirrors of the human soul. They reflect ambition, greed, courage, wisdom, and desire. They challenge us to confront our shadows, to rise above temptation, to embrace the extraordinary, and to imagine what lies beyond the limits of ordinary perception. Across cultures, their forms may differ, but their purpose is the same: to inspire, to teach, to awe, to remind us that life, like the dragon, is immense, beautiful, dangerous, and full of mystery. As we gaze upon the dragons of the past, the dragons of myth, the dragons of modern screens and pages, we see more than fire and scales. We see ourselves, our fears, our hopes, our desire to transcend the ordinary, to touch the infinite. They are the eternal companions of humanity's imagination, guides through shadow and light, chaos and order, fear and wonder. And so across continents, across millennia, dragons continue to soar. They coil above mountains and rivers. They whisper in stories and dreams. They breathe fire into imagination and mist into memory. They are guardians of the unknown, teachers of courage, mirrors of our deepest truths. To encounter a dragon is to confront the vastness of existence itself. It is to recognize the limits of knowledge, the potential of courage, the necessity of awe. It is to stand before mystery and feel, for a moment, the pulse of the eternal. In the end, dragons are not merely creatures of myth. They are living symbols of humanity's journey, its fears, its hopes, its relentless quest to understand, to imagine, and to dream. They are timeless, they are boundless, they are eternal. And in their eyes, we see reflected the greatest truth of all. The world is vast, life is extraordinary, and wonder is the spark that connects us to everything beyond ourselves. The dragon waits, as it always has, as it always will. Its wings stir the clouds, its fire lights the night, its presence calls to the hearts of those who dare to dream. To follow it is to embark on the oldest journey of all, the journey of the human spirit, ever seeking, ever learning, ever awed. And in that journey, dragons are not monsters nor mere stories. They are the eternal flame of imagination itself. And now, we arrive at the present moment, where dragons inhabit every corner of imagination, yet remain as ancient as the first tales whispered beside firelight. From the flowing lung of China to the fiery worms of Europe, from Ryu and Yong to Smaug, from myth to modern media, dragons have endured. They are everywhere and nowhere, tangible and ethereal, terrifying and magnificent. They are not bound by time, culture, or medium. They are bound only by the human mind and heart. In the East, dragons continue to symbolize wisdom, balance, and prosperity. They glide through clouds and rivers, shaping weather, guarding life, and reminding humanity of harmony with the natural and cosmic order. They are teachers, guides, emissaries of forces larger than the self, whose power is tempered with purpose, whose fire illuminates rather than destroys. Across the vast tapestry of human history, dragons have appeared in corners of the world so distant, so isolated from one another, that it seems impossible their stories could share a common thread. From the rivers of China to the fjords of Scandinavia, from the deserts of Mesopotamia to the mountains of the Americas, dragons emerge again and again, sometimes as wise guides, sometimes as terrifying adversaries. They coil through myths, legends, art, and ritual. Persistent and unyielding, a symbol of something the human mind cannot forget. Some scholars trace the dragon to the earliest memories of humankind, suggesting that its origin lies not in the real, but in the universal. Teeth, bones, fossils of massive prehistoric reptiles unearthed by our ancestors may have sparked the first glimmers of the dragon myth. Imagine a child of the Ice Age stumbling upon the jawbone of a dinosaur or the claw of a giant lizard, seeing in that fragment both wonder and terror. From these fragments, the imagination wove scales and wings, fire and flight, weaving them into stories that would survive thousands of years. Psychologically, dragons occupy a unique space in the human mind. Carl Jung, the eminent analyst of dreams and archetypes, argued that dragons represent the shadow, the dark, dangerous, and unknown aspects of the self. In dreams, The dragon is the challenge we must confront, the force of desire, pride, or fear that tests our courage. Across cultures, these shadow images emerge independently, reflecting the shared human need to give shape to the unknown. The dragon is an answer to a universal question: what do we fear, and how do we face it? Yet the story does not end in the imagination alone. Over millennia, dragons became cultural currency, moving along the arteries of trade, conquest, and migration. The Silk Road, winding from China to the Mediterranean, carried silk, spices, ideas, and stories of dragons. Merchants and travelers exchanged more than goods. They exchanged symbols, legends, and images. A lung might inspire awe in one land, while its coiled form becomes a serpent guarding treasure in another. Dragons, in this way, evolved not only in isolation but in dialogue, their mythologies shaped and reshaped by every culture that touched them. Conquest and empire left their mark as well. When Mongols rode across Asia, they carried stories of celestial dragons that brought rain and harmony, tales of beasts whose power demanded respect and obedience. When Vikings crossed the seas of Europe, they brought tales of worms and sea serpents, of monsters whose fire consumed villages and whose greed could topple kings. In the encounter of these worlds, East meeting West, trade routes meeting battlefields, dragons became symbols of the meeting of ideas, of the collision of human experience. Over time, these collisions shaped hybrid myths. In Central Asia, where East and West met, dragons were sometimes depicted with the flowing grace of the lung, but with the destructive fire of the Western worm. Artifacts, coins, and manuscripts show coiled beasts with scales and wings that suggest synthesis rather than isolation. The dragon was no longer merely a local emblem. It became a conduit of imagination, a shared language across cultures separated by geography, but united in their fascination with the mysterious. Even language preserves the echoes of this collision. The word dragon itself carries ancient roots, tracing back to Greek draken, serpent or giant serpent, while in Chinese, long embodies not just the creature, but the cosmic order it represents. Across centuries, these terms traveled, sometimes transforming, sometimes merging. And in each shift, they carried the weight of myth, history, and psychology alike. Dragons also embody the human relationship with nature, a factor that transcends culture. In Eastern myths, dragons control water and rain, sustaining agriculture and life. In Western myths, dragons guard mountains, rivers, and gold, embodying natural forces humans cannot dominate. Across continents, dragons serve as a bridge between humanity and the untamed world, a reminder of power that is neither entirely benevolent nor malevolent, but vast, eternal, and worthy of respect. Trade, conquest, migration, and communication created a cultural network in which dragons traveled faster than armies or merchants. Along caravan routes, in ports, in royal courts, dragons were painted, carved, sung, and danced. A single image might inspire thousands of stories across borders and decades. The dragon became a vessel for shared human concerns: power, fear, morality, respect for nature, and the awe of forces beyond comprehension. And so, across time and space, dragons evolved in parallel and in dialogue. The benevolent Eastern dragon and the fearsome Western worm are not contradictions. They are complementary expressions of the same human impulse: to give form to the immense, the dangerous, the inspiring, and the unknown. One teaches harmony, the other tests courage. One guides, the other challenges. Together, they chart the spectrum of humanity's encounter with mystery. And yet, their forms vary astonishingly. In the East, dragons flow like water, sinuous and elegant, embodiments of cosmic order and benevolence. In the West, dragons roar with fire, massive and menacing, guarding treasure and embodying chaos. How then did such wildly divergent images arise from the same archetypal seed? What alchemy of imagination, necessity, and history forged these creatures in the human psyche. As caravans wound their way across deserts and mountains, dragons traveled alongside silk, spices, and precious metals. On the sands of Central Asia, merchants traded not only gold, but tales of winged serpents and celestial beasts. A Chinese lung, coiling through the clouds and summoning rain, might inspire a traveler to tell of a serpent with a fiery breath, guarding the treasures of the earth. Across deserts and steppe, these tales melded, evolving into hybrid creatures that carried elements of East and West, wisdom and danger, guidance and terror. Artifacts from the crossroads of East and West bear this fusion. Coins from the Silk Road depict serpentine creatures with the flowing elegance of Eastern lung, but with wings and claws reminiscent of European dragons. Manuscripts from the courts of the Mongol Empire illustrate serpents rising from rivers, yet breathing fire or holding precious stones in clawed hands. These hybrid images reveal that the dragon was more than myth. It was a cultural lingua franca, a symbol whose language transcended dialects, faiths, and geographies. Maritime trade added another dimension. As Arab traders sailed across the Indian Ocean, bringing goods from the Far East to Africa and Europe, dragons transformed again. Sailors spoke of sea serpents long enough to engulf ships, coiling beneath the waves, yet intelligent and aware of human cunning. These creatures merged with local folklore, giving birth to myths of leviathans and oceanic dragons, connecting the rivers of China with the oceans of the Mediterranean. The dragon was no longer confined to land. It became a symbol of travel, exploration, and the dangers inherent in human ambition. Conquest and empire accelerated these exchanges. The Mongol Empire, spanning from the Pacific to Eastern Europe, carried dragons in both literal and symbolic forms. The emperor's banners often depicted lung-like dragons as divine symbols of rule and cosmic harmony. As Mongols entered Europe, encounters with European folklore sparked comparisons, sometimes tensions, often syncretism. A dragon could be simultaneously a divine guide, a test of valor, and a harbinger of disaster, depending on which story a traveler chose to tell. Even religion and philosophy contributed to the fusion of dragon imagery. Buddhist and Taoist texts spread through Central and East Asia, describing dragons as custodians of wisdom and spiritual transformation. These stories influenced regions along the Silk Road, blending with Zoroastrian, Islamic, and later Christian legends. A dragon guarding a treasure hoard could symbolize material greed, spiritual temptation, or cosmic balance, depending on the lens of culture and context. In this way, dragons became mirrors, reflecting the diversity and commonality of human values and fears. Linguistic traces tell a similar story. The Greek draken entered Latin and later European languages, describing a serpent-like monster, while long in Chinese described both celestial power and earthly force. Along trade routes, merchants, scholars, and travelers sometimes merged these terms in translations, creating hybrid names and ideas that carried both connotations of wisdom and danger. By the medieval period, the conceptual migration of dragons had produced an intricate web of cross-cultural mythologies, connecting distant lands through a shared fascination with these creatures. Even local geography shaped dragon myths during these exchanges. In Central Asia, high mountain passes became homes for serpents of legend. Rivers and lakes were guarded by creatures part serpent, part bird, part elemental force. When these stories reached Europe, travelers recast dragons into forests, caves, and mountains of stone and gold. When retold in China or Japan, the European worm's fire and claws could merge with local visions of flowing power and cosmic authority. The dragon, in effect, became a living metaphor for the way humans negotiate their environment, their culture, and their imagination. Trade and cultural exchange also influenced artistic techniques. Dragon motifs in textiles, pottery, and manuscripts traveled along these routes, evolving in style while preserving core symbolic meaning. A lung's flowing form could appear on a Persian carpet, a European tapestry, or a Mongolian scroll. The dragon's image became a visual shorthand for power, protection, danger, and mystery, universally recognized, locally interpreted. Across time, the same coiled form could symbolize a benevolent ruler, a destructive monster, or the eternal forces of nature, depending on the storyteller. In essence, dragons were the ultimate ambassadors of human creativity. They carried within them fears, hopes, and lessons, transcending borders, epochs, and languages. From one region to the next, they absorbed meaning, transformed, and yet remained recognizable. Trade, conquest, migration, and curiosity ensured that dragons were never static. They were living symbols, evolving as human societies evolved, always bridging the known and unknown, the tangible and the imagined. Across continents, the echoes of these exchanges are still visible. From the flowing lung of East Asia to the treasure-hoarding worm of Europe, from Central Asian hybrid serpents to oceanic leviathans, dragons carry a shared human legacy. They remind us that imagination is not confined by geography, that symbols can travel faster than armies, that myths evolve alongside civilization. The dragon's endurance is a testament to the power of cultural dialogue, the way stories, like rivers, flow, converge, and reshape entire worlds of thought. In Persia, dragons occupied a unique position. The ancient Zoroastrian traditions spoke of Aji-Dahaka, a three-headed serpent demon whose tyranny threatened kings and kingship itself. Yet as trade brought Chinese art and stories into the region, the rigidly malevolent serpent began to acquire subtler qualities in folklore. Wisdom coiled within malice, the promise of knowledge within danger. In the interstices of empire, dragons became negotiators of complexity, embodiments of forces that were neither wholly good nor wholly evil, but both, depending on the observer. Beneath the scales and wings, beneath fire and flowing clouds, dragons speak a language older than history, older even than civilization itself. They speak directly to the human psyche, to the deep currents of fear, wonder, and ambition that run through every mind. Across continents and millennia, cultures have invented dragons to answer the same questions. How do we confront the unknown? How do we harness power without being destroyed by it? How do we find balance between chaos and order, desire and restraint, courage and caution? Dragons also embody transformation, a universal motif in human psychology. In many myths, the hero must face, outwit, or ally with the dragon to achieve growth. The dragon is never merely an obstacle, it is a catalyst. It tests moral courage, resilience, and wisdom. In stories from East or West, the confrontation with the dragon signals the transition from ignorance to understanding, from fear to mastery, from mortality to insight. Whether the dragon delivers rain or hoards gold, it is always a measure of human potential and limitation. Shared human fears and desires likely shape the convergent emergence of dragon imagery across continents. Across time and geography, humans have faced predators larger and more dangerous than themselves: snakes, crocodiles, lions, and birds of prey. These natural threats, observed over millennia, may have coalesced into the universal dragon archetype, a creature capable of flight, of burning or drowning, of overwhelming strength. From fossilized bones to real predators, imagination filled the gaps, creating a creature that could embody the ultimate challenge and the ultimate awe. Dragons also respond to the human need to explain natural phenomena. Thunderstorms, floods, volcanic eruptions, and comets were once inexplicable, terrifying forces. In Eastern traditions, dragons command weather and water, bringing rain to nourish the earth. In Western traditions, dragons breathe fire and shake the land, externalizing destructive natural events. Across cultures, dragons provide a narrative framework for humans to process and survive the uncertainty of their world. The convergence of myths along trade routes, as discussed in Part 2, reinforced these archetypal functions. As Eastern and Western stories intersected through commerce, conquest, and migration, dragons absorbed elements from multiple cultures, creating shared motifs. The coiled serpent, the winged predator, the treasure guardian. These images recur from China to Persia, from Central Asia to Europe. Each culture adapted the dragon to its values and environment. But the underlying psychological resonance remained remarkably constant. Dragons also symbolize the duality inherent in human experience. In Eastern myth, a dragon might both punish and protect, both challenge and guide. In Western myth, a dragon might kill and devastate, yet its defeat provides enlightenment, reward, or salvation. Both interpretations explore the tension between creation and destruction, danger and reward, chaos and order. This duality reflects the human condition itself. Every act of ambition carries risk. Every encounter with the unknown carries lessons. The dragon is a living mirror of this truth. Mythic dragons also fulfill the need for collective imagination. Humans are social creatures, and shared stories teach, bind, and inspire communities. A dragon in a village story, a royal court painting, or a trade caravan tale reinforces communal values: respect for nature, courage in the face of danger, loyalty, and cleverness. In this sense, dragons are not only psychological archetypes, but cultural tools, enabling societies separated by geography to navigate life's challenges in parallel ways. Across cultures, dragons also integrate morality and cosmology. In China, dragons are aligned with heaven, water, and the emperor, symbolizing harmony and cosmic balance. In medieval Europe, dragons are often aligned with sin, chaos, or demonic forces, reflecting a moral order in which the hero must confront and overcome evil. Yet in both cases, the dragon serves as an ethical touchstone, a creature whose existence demands reflection, courage, and discernment. It is the ultimate teacher, whether through fear, respect, or inspiration. Finally, dragons endure because they are profoundly adaptable. They can be terrifying, benevolent, tragic, or humorous. They can embody natural forces, psychological shadows, moral lessons, or spiritual truths. They can be worshipped, feared, slain, befriended, or studied. This flexibility allows dragons to migrate across cultures, to survive changing societies, to evolve with the human imagination itself. Whether in the mountains of ancient China or the forests of medieval Europe, the dragon has remained relevant because it meets essential psychological and cultural needs, offering lessons that are universal and timeless. In sum, dragons are more than myth. They are reflections of human psychology, embodiments of universal archetypes, and bridges between cultures separated by geography and time. Their forms differ, their temperaments vary, yet their purpose is strikingly similar: to teach, to awe, to challenge, and to illuminate the human journey. In facing dragons, whether coiled in clouds, sleeping beneath mountains, or blazing across oceans, we confront not only the unknown world, but the unknown within ourselves. Carl Jung, in his exploration of archetypes, suggested that dragons represent the shadow, the unacknowledged, dangerous, yet vital aspects of the self. Every culture, he argued, projects its fears and desires onto dragons, crafting them as guides, adversaries, or both. In Europe, dragons hoard gold and burn villages, externalizing human greed, pride, and ambition. In China, dragons govern rivers and clouds, manifesting the human desire to live in harmony with the cosmic order. Despite these differences, Both embody the confrontation with forces greater than the individual, a reflection of the psychological journey every human must undertake. Across deserts, mountains, and seas, dragons traveled as emissaries of imagination, carried by traders, travelers, and conquerors. Their forms and meanings shifted subtly, shaped by geography, belief, and necessity. Yet their essence, their power to awe, inspire, and terrify remained constant. Historical artifacts, manuscripts, and art provide a window into this process, revealing how dragon imagery fused across civilizations in ways both deliberate and accidental. Persia provides another remarkable example. The Zoroastrian Ajidahaka, a three-headed serpent demon, represented destruction and chaos. Yet, as Persian merchants and scholars encountered Eastern stories of lung dragons through trade and conquest, these narratives began to influence local depictions. Manuscripts from the medieval Islamic world show dragons that combine malevolent traits, poisonous breath, monstrous jaws, with benevolent qualities such as wisdom, celestial alignment, or guardianship. Dragons here become morally complex, embodying the duality of human understanding, capable of devastation, yet also of teaching and revelation. Maritime trade expanded the dragon's reach even further. Arab sailors traversing the Indian Ocean carried tales of sea serpents, immense, coiling creatures that could swallow ships whole. These stories merged with local Southeast Asian myths of river and ocean dragons, creating narratives in which serpentine creatures commanded storms, currents, and tides. By the time these stories reached the Mediterranean, they had evolved into leviathans of biblical and Greek tradition, monstrous, awe-inspiring, and morally charged. Across oceans and cultures, the dragon became a bridge between worlds, connecting distant peoples through shared wonder and fear. The Mongol Empire provides perhaps the most striking example of cross-cultural dragon symbolism. Spanning from China to Eastern Europe, the Mongol Empire transported art, literature, and religious beliefs across thousands of miles. In their courts, the emperor's banners displayed lung dragons, signaling divine authority and cosmic harmony. When Mongol envoys reached Europe, tales of celestial dragons combined with European worms in the imagination of scribes and storytellers. The dragon became a symbol not only of divine or natural power, but also of human ambition, conquest, and the tension between foreign and familiar. Even everyday objects reveal this cultural interplay. Silk textiles from China featuring coiled dragons reached the Mediterranean, inspiring European artisans to incorporate serpentine motifs into tapestries and illuminated manuscripts. Similarly, European depictions of winged, fire-breathing dragons occasionally made their way east through trade, leaving traces in decorative ceramics, armor, and scroll illustrations. The dragon, it seems, had become a universal emblem whose meaning could be adapted, integrated, and reinterpreted without losing its essential majesty. Religious and philosophical texts also shaped hybrid dragon myths. Buddhist and Taoist scriptures describing dragons as custodians of wisdom and cosmic balance spread westward along trade routes, influencing Central Asian, Persian, and even Mediterranean traditions. In these contexts, dragons could represent both divine guidance and formidable challenge, reflecting the human struggle to understand moral and cosmic order. Meanwhile, European Christian texts emphasized dragons as symbols of sin, temptation, and chaos. Yet echoes of Eastern benevolence occasionally appear in medieval bestiaries, suggesting subtle awareness of distant mythologies. This cultural blending is not limited to art and text. Folklore, festival, and ritual practices also carry evidence of dragon exchange. In Central Asia, communities celebrated dragons as rain-bringers, yet acknowledged their destructive potential in harsh weather. In Europe, festival effigies and parades portrayed dragons as monstrous adversaries, yet often incorporated elements of serpentine grace or protective qualities borrowed, perhaps unconsciously, from distant traditions. In every instance, dragons mediated human understanding of environment, society, and morality. Through these historical encounters, dragons became more than local myths. They became global symbols. Trade, conquest, and migration created a network of stories in which dragons could shift in meaning without losing their archetypal resonance. Eastern dragons could gain Western ferocity. Western dragons could acquire Eastern elegance. Celestial guidance and earthly challenge coexisted in a single coil, a single wing beat. Across continents and centuries, dragons evolved not merely as creatures of imagination, but as bridges linking human societies in a shared encounter with mystery, awe, and power. And yet, even as dragons adapted to cultural exchange, they retained essential truths. They continued to embody forces larger than humanity, the unknown, the dangerous, the transformative. They reminded each culture that survival, wisdom, and courage depend on recognizing and respecting these forces. Whether benevolent or malevolent, guardians or monsters, dragons became enduring symbols of the human negotiation with the world, with others, and with the self. In Central Asia, at the crossroads of East and West, dragons often took hybrid forms that synthesized multiple traditions. Archaeological finds along the Silk Road depict serpentine creatures with elongated, flowing bodies reminiscent of the Chinese lung, yet with wings, claws, and fangs evocative of European dragons. Coins, murals, and amulets show dragons breathing fire while coiling around rivers or mountains, merging the Eastern association with water and cosmic order with the Western connection to power, treasure, and danger. These hybrid creatures illustrate that dragons were not static symbols, but living icons, capable of transformation and adaptation in response to human movement and cultural contact. In the modern era, dragons have taken flight on screens, pages, and stages around the world, transcending geography in ways their ancestors could scarcely have imagined. Globalization, mass media, and the interconnectedness of culture have allowed the dragon to evolve once more, merging Eastern elegance with Western ferocity, wisdom with menace, harmony with chaos. Today, the dragon is a shared symbol, recognized from Tokyo to London, Beijing to New York, yet interpreted in ways that reflect the rich tapestry of its cross-cultural history. Films and television have become the most powerful vehicles for this synthesis. In cinematic spectacles such as How to Train Your Dragon, dragons combine intelligence, empathy, and moral guidance, echoes of the Eastern Lung and Ryu, while retaining the awe-inspiring presence and physical danger characteristic of Western Wyrms. These dragons are simultaneously teachers and challenges, companions and reminders of human limitations, illustrating the enduring duality embedded in myth. Audiences witness creatures that breathe fire yet act with loyalty, fly majestically yet demand courage, blending attributes that once existed separately in East and West. Video games and literature further reinforce this convergence. Titles like The Elder Scrolls, Dragon Age, and Pokémon present dragons that are morally complex, culturally hybrid, and visually diverse. A single dragon might guard treasure, impart wisdom, embody natural forces, or serve as an avatar of cosmic order. Through interactive media, players confront dragons directly, making choices that reflect courage, empathy, and strategy. These experiences mirror the psychological functions of dragons in myth. They challenge the human mind, evoke fear and admiration, and reward understanding and skill. Global literature and collaborative storytelling continue this integration. Writers draw freely on Eastern and Western motifs, creating dragons that are simultaneously benevolent and threatening. Elemental and intelligent, awe-inspiring and morally instructive, the Lung's flowing majesty can merge with Smaug's territorial intensity. The Ryu's moral guidance can intersect with the destructive cunning of Fafnir. Through these narratives, the dragon becomes a universal emblem, a creature whose symbolic power is no longer constrained by cultural borders, but enriched by them. Popular culture festivals and performances also reflect cross-cultural dragon fusion. The Chinese New Year Dragon Dance, once a localized celebration of rain, prosperity, and cosmic harmony, now appears in cities worldwide, alongside European dragon-themed parades and theatrical performances. In these contexts, dragons are simultaneously ancestral icons and global storytellers, teaching shared values: courage, respect for power, recognition of danger, and the celebration of wonder. In urban plazas from Sao Paulo to San Francisco, dragons weave together history, art, and imagination, carrying messages that are at once local and universal. Psychologically, these modern dragons retain their archetypal potency. Jungian interpretations persist, now amplified by interactive, immersive media. To face a dragon on a screen or page is still to confront the unknown within and without, to wrestle with ambition, greed, wisdom, and fear. The dragon challenges moral judgment, rewards insight, and inspires awe, just as it did in ancient myths. Globalization has not diluted this psychological resonance, rather, it has magnified it, offering the human mind countless variations of the same eternal confrontation. Even merchandise, branding, and commercial storytelling contribute to the hybridization of dragons. Toys, video games, and films propagate a unified dragon vocabulary, one that draws freely from East and West. Children grow up recognizing dragons as powerful, intelligent, and morally instructive, absorbing lessons that resonate with the archetypal patterns established millennia ago. The dragon becomes an educational tool, a moral guide, and an agent of imagination simultaneously, demonstrating the adaptability and universality of its myth. Art and literature also highlight the dragon as a symbol of human aspiration. In contemporary graphic novels and films, dragons soar through skies of fire and cloud, embodying ambition, creativity, and transcendence. Their wings stretch across cultural boundaries. Their fire burns through fear. Their wisdom challenges arrogance. The dragon's cross-cultural identity mirrors the interconnectedness of the modern world, a reminder that shared myths can unite diverse peoples while honoring the distinctiveness of each tradition. Ultimately, the dragon in the modern era is a testament to human imagination's resilience and adaptability. It thrives in an age of technology, globalization, and cross-cultural dialogue because it fulfills universal psychological and social functions: to challenge, to teach, to inspire, and to awe. The dragon embodies the encounter with power and mystery, bridging ancient and contemporary thought, East and West, myth and media. Its flight spans time and space, reminding humanity that some forces, both external and internal, are eternal, complex, and endlessly fascinating. Through this cross-cultural lens, dragons are no longer merely creatures of legend. They are living symbols of shared human experience, dynamic carriers of imagination, morality, and wonder. In every cinematic roar, every coiled illustration, every festival performance, dragons continue to teach the lessons that have echoed through millennia: courage, wisdom, balance, and the transformative power of awe. In the 21st century, dragons are no longer bound to the skies of a single continent or the pages of isolated myths. They have become global icons, bridging the imagination of East and West, ancient and modern. The synthesis of these traditions has produced dragons that are complex, multidimensional, and resonant with the universal human psyche. They are no longer merely benevolent guides or malevolent beasts. They are avatars of moral reflection. psychological confrontation, and the boundless possibilities of imagination. This fusion is evident in contemporary storytelling. In film, literature, and interactive media, dragons often serve as catalysts for transformation. They test heroes and humans alike, demanding insight, empathy, and moral discernment. A single dragon may challenge greed while offering guidance. It may breathe fire while teaching patience. In this way, the dragon becomes an ethical compass, a living metaphor for the human struggle to balance desire, responsibility, and the unknown. Philosophically, dragons occupy a space where humanity confronts the limits of knowledge and power. Eastern dragons remind us that life and nature are interconnected, that wisdom lies in harmony with forces larger than the self. Western dragons remind us that courage, vigilance, and moral clarity are necessary to face chaos and temptation. When these traits merge in modern dragons, they create a symbolic guide for navigating complexity, a creature that teaches humility, resilience, imagination, and ethical action simultaneously. Globally, dragons also serve as cultural ambassadors, connecting societies through shared symbols. A child in Beijing encountering a Western-style dragon in a video game recognizes echoes of their own artistic expression reinforces this synthesis. Modern illustrations, films, and sculptures combine the flowing elegance of Eastern dragons with the raw power of Western worms. Scales shimmer like water, yet reflect fire. Wings stretch like clouds, yet strike like lightning. This visual language conveys a psychological and cultural truth. Dragons are not bound by singular interpretations, but embody the multifaceted nature of human understanding. In every detail, the curve of a claw, the flicker of an eye, the sweep of a tail, dragons symbolize both the external and internal landscapes of humanity. In education, media, and storytelling, these hybrid dragons teach timeless lessons. They encourage moral reasoning, creative problem-solving, and emotional intelligence. They model the integration of opposites, courage tempered by wisdom, ambition balanced with restraint, curiosity aligned with respect. By blending Eastern and Western traits, dragons become exemplars of holistic human values, offering guidance across contexts as diverse as culture, geography, and generation. Psychologically, the synthesized dragon functions as both mirror and mentor. It reflects human shadows, fear, pride, greed, while offering a path toward mastery, understanding, and balance. It embodies the Jungian archetype of the shadow and the teacher simultaneously. In confronting the dragon, whether in myth, story, or imagination, humans engage in a ritual of self-discovery, learning to navigate the unknown both within and without. Ultimately, the synthesis of dragons in global consciousness illustrates the adaptability and universality of myth. Through centuries of trade, conquest, migration, and cultural exchange, dragons have evolved from regional symbols into archetypal figures that resonate across humanity. They carry the wisdom of the East, the caution of the West, and the enduring capacity to inspire awe. They teach that complexity, duality, and ambiguity are not threats, but opportunities. Opportunities for courage, reflection, and imagination. Dragons, in this modern global vision, are more than creatures of legend. They are symbolic guides through the moral, psychological, and imaginative landscapes of life. They remind us that courage must be tempered with wisdom, that power demands responsibility, that the unknown is both dangerous and sublime. They are eternal, adaptable, and universal, bridging cultures, time, and consciousness in a single, coiled flight of imagination. Through this synthesis, humanity gains more than myth. It gains a mirror, a teacher, and a shared vision. Dragons are both warning and wonder, challenge and guide, shadow and light. In their convergence, we see the full potential of myth, to illuminate, to inspire, and to unite. Across the world, across centuries, dragons endure, and in their enduring presence, they continue to teach humanity how to face the unknown with courage, wisdom, and awe. In this symbolic synthesis, the dragon embodies dualities that have always defined human experience: creation and destruction, wisdom and instinct, courage and fear, harmony and chaos. The lung's flowing grace merges with the worm's formidable strength. The Ryu's guidance blends with Smaug's cunning. The Yong's nurturing presence intersects with Fafnir's warning. Across cultures, these traits converge, creating dragons that are simultaneously teachers, adversaries, and mirrors, reflecting the full spectrum of human emotion and aspiration. Across millennia, dragons have remained both constant and endlessly adaptable, threading through human history like rivers of fire and clouds of smoke. They have lived in the mountains, rivers, and skies of countless cultures, yet they are more than local myths. They are reflections of the human mind itself, archetypes that traverse geography, language, and era. From the flowing lung of China to the treasure-guarding worms of Europe, from Zoroastrian serpents to maritime leviathans, dragons have persisted because they embody the essential questions every human generation must confront. How do we face the unknown? How do we wield power responsibly? How do we balance fear and awe, desire and restraint, courage and wisdom? Psychologically, dragons operate on multiple levels. They are shadow and mentor, terror and teacher. Confronting a dragon, whether in myth, literature, film, or imagination, is to confront the self, to recognize ambition, pride, fear, and desire. In Eastern myths, this confrontation often emphasizes alignment, harmony, and respect for forces larger than oneself. In Western myths, it emphasizes courage, moral choice, and the mastery of chaos. In a globalized imagination, modern dragons synthesize these lessons. To face the unknown with bravery, wisdom, and ethical discernment is both universal and timeless. Modern media magnifies these functions. Films, novels, and games depict dragons that are morally complex, intelligent, and awe-inspiring. They embody fire and water, chaos and balance, danger and guidance. Children, adolescents, and adults alike encounter dragons not just as creatures of fantasy, but as tools for imagination, moral reflection, and emotional development. The dragon's flight now spans continents instantaneously, yet its archetypal resonance remains rooted in ancient psychological patterns and shared cultural heritage. Dragons also teach humanity about interconnectedness. Through cross-cultural exchange, hybrid myths, and global media, dragons have become universal symbols of imagination and moral insight. A dragon in Tokyo may remind a child of myths told by their ancestors. A dragon in London may evoke the same feelings of awe, fear, and respect that centuries of Eastern and Western storytellers intended. In their synthesis, dragons bridge not only cultures, but generations, creating a shared human encounter with mystery and power. Yet even as dragons evolve, they preserve a sense of the sacred and sublime. They remind humans that some forces, natural, cosmic, and psychological, cannot be fully controlled, only approached with courage, reverence, and imagination. They are mirrors of the vastness of life itself, teaching humility and curiosity in equal measure. They are the eternal pulse of wonder, the embodiment of that liminal space where fear and fascination meet, where morality and imagination converge. In every scale, every wingbeat, every coiled form, dragons embody lessons about the human condition. They are caution and inspiration, terror and beauty, chaos and order. They are ancient and modern, Eastern and Western, local and global. They endure because they reflect fundamental truths. Life is immense and unpredictable. Courage and wisdom are inseparable. Awe and wonder are vital to the human spirit. Through this lens, dragons are more than myths. They are teachers of resilience, imagination, and ethical engagement. They are guides through the unknown and mirrors of the self. Across continents, through centuries, and into the digital age, dragons continue to soar, reminding humanity that mystery is not to be conquered, but understood, respected, and integrated into the experience of life. In the end, the dragon is the ultimate symbol of the human journey. It is a creature that bridges culture, time, and imagination, a living testament to humanity's quest to understand the world, to confront fear, and to celebrate wonder. Benevolent or fearsome, coiled in clouds or guarding treasure, dragons endure because they embody what humans most need: courage, wisdom, awe, and the boundless power of imagination. As we look across history, across oceans, across myths, we see that dragons are never merely creatures of legend. They are eternal companions of the human spirit, teaching us to face the unknown, to balance desire with responsibility, and to soar with courage and wonder. In their eyes, we glimpse the vastness of the world, the complexity of life, and the infinite potential of imagination itself. The dragon waits still, as it always has, as it always will. Its wings stir the clouds of imagination. Its fire lights the path of understanding. Its gaze calls to the hearts of those who dare to dream. And in answering that call, humanity continues the oldest journey of all, the journey into the unknown, guided by the eternal presence of the dragon. The historical path of dragons reveals a fascinating dialogue across civilizations. Trade routes carried their images and stories. Conquest spread their influence. Migration transported their tales. In every case, dragons absorbed traits from other cultures while retaining core meanings. The lung gained the threat and grandeur of Western dragons. The European worm absorbed elegance, cosmic significance, and moral complexity from Eastern encounters. Even as their appearances diverged, scales and wings, claws and fangs, sinuous coils or massive bulk, their symbolic resonance converged, reflecting shared human concerns. From ancient scrolls to blockbuster screens, dragons continue to captivate us. Their scales glint in sunlight and fire. Their wings stir clouds of imagination. Their eyes hold both wisdom and menace. Across time, dragons have been guardians, destroyers, teachers, and symbols. But today, in the modern world, their roles are evolving. They are no longer confined to the mythologies of the East or the medieval epics of the West. They have re-emerged in ways that challenge, inspire, and redefine their significance. Video games provide a particularly rich canvas for this transformation. Titles such as Skyrim and Dragon Age allow players to confront dragons directly, shaping their interactions through choice, strategy, and empathy. In these narratives, dragons are not simply obstacles or monsters. They are teachers, adversaries, allies, and sometimes moral arbiters. They may guard treasures, defend ancient secrets, or act as catalysts for human growth. Players experience the psychological and ethical dimensions of dragon encounters firsthand, bridging the gap between myth and lived imagination, and reinforcing dragons as mirrors of human challenge and potential. Fantasy literature offers a similarly nuanced portrayal. Novels like Aragon or Naomi Novik's Temeraire series portray dragons as sentient, intelligent beings with distinct personalities, emotions, and complex moral reasoning. They form bonds with humans that are neither wholly dependent nor entirely subordinate. Here, dragons are collaborators, advisors, and moral compasses, embodying the archetypal dualities that have fascinated humans for millennia: wisdom and power, fear and awe, freedom and restraint. Through these narratives, dragons continue their ancient role as teachers, but in ways that resonate with contemporary audiences' desire for psychological depth and relational complexity. Cinema amplifies dragons' evolving roles with stunning visual and emotional impact. Films like How to Train Your Dragon depict dragons as allies, intelligent creatures capable of empathy and collaboration, while the Harry Potter and the Hobbit franchises explore dragons as both formidable threats and morally ambiguous entities. These portrayals demonstrate that dragons are no longer one-dimensional symbols of chaos or wisdom. They are hybrid figures capable of embodying multiple, sometimes contradictory, roles simultaneously. They reflect the complexity of the modern world and the human psyche, where power, morality, and emotion intersect in unpredictable ways. Dragons are also increasingly symbolic in contemporary storytelling. Beyond their literal presence, they can represent ambition, environmental forces, psychological challenges, or the human imagination itself. In some narratives, a dragon is a metaphor for societal structures or personal struggle. In others, it embodies creativity, freedom, or transformation. These symbolic roles build on centuries of myth while adapting to contemporary sensibilities, demonstrating the enduring versatility and resonance of the dragon archetype. The resurgence of dragons in modern media also reflects humanity's ongoing fascination with the unknown and the extraordinary. In an age dominated by technology, information, and rationality, dragons offer a reminder of mystery, danger, and awe. They evoke a sense of scale and power that challenges human hubris, inviting reflection on courage, morality, and imagination. In every encounter, whether in a game, a novel, or a film, the dragon compels us to consider what it means to face forces larger than ourselves and to navigate the balance between fear, respect, and understanding. As dragons continue to evolve, their cultural and psychological significance remains profound. They are mirrors of our collective imagination, repositories of mythic memory, and symbols of human aspiration. They embody complexity, morality, power, and wonder in ways that resonate across generations. They are not relics of the past, nor mere entertainment. They are living symbols, reimagined and resurrected, capable of teaching, challenging, and inspiring in ways that are uniquely suited to the modern era. And so, as we watch dragons soar across screens and pages, we are compelled to ask, what do these enduring creatures tell us about our... In contemporary media, dragons are everywhere, yet never quite the same. In video games, they are both companions and adversaries. In fantasy novels, they are complex characters with motives, ethics, and personalities that rival humans. In films, they soar across CGI skies, dazzling audiences while embodying archetypal power. Across platforms, dragons are being reimagined as creatures capable of nuance, morality, and psychological depth, reflecting the changing ways humanity engages with myth, narrative, and imagination. In modern narratives, dragons are no longer merely monsters to be vanquished. They are companions, guides, and complex moral agents. In video games like The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, the dragon is at once adversary and teacher. Alduin, the World Eater, is a force of destruction, embodying the inevitability of change, mortality, and cosmic consequence. Yet even in opposition, dragons teach players strategy, adaptability, and reflection. Each confrontation is a negotiation with intelligence and power beyond human scale, reinforcing the archetypal duality of dragons: danger intertwined with insight, terror coexisting with awe. Dragons as anti-heroes provide another layer of narrative depth. In series like Naomi Novik's Temeraire, dragons are sentient beings with individual morality, capable of both compassion and vengeance. Their actions are not inherently good or evil, but contextual, shaped by circumstance, intelligence, and relationships. This complexity resonates with contemporary storytelling's fascination with moral ambiguity, emphasizing the shared responsibility of humans and dragons in shaping outcomes. Such portrayals honor the dragon's archetypal duality, transforming it into a figure that challenges readers to confront ethical dilemmas and the consequences of choice. Beyond literal representation, dragons also serve symbolic roles in contemporary media. They embody ambition, creativity, environmental forces, and internal psychological struggles. In some fantasy novels, dragons represent human greed, desire, or the pursuit of knowledge, echoing the Western worm's hoarding of treasure. In other narratives, they symbolize wisdom, spiritual growth, or the mysteries of the natural world, reflecting Eastern archetypes of harmony, guidance, and cosmic balance. These symbolic functions allow dragons to remain relevant, even as stories and mediums evolve, connecting modern audiences with the enduring psychological and cultural resonance of dragon mythology. Dragon's symbolic versatility extends to genre and media. In films like The Hobbit or Harry Potter, dragons are simultaneously threat and enigma, testing courage, morality, and ingenuity. In interactive media, their role as adversary or ally depends on player choice, reflecting a democratization of myth. Audiences now participate directly in shaping the dragon's narrative, forging personal meaning in its encounters. Across formats, dragons maintain their archetypal function while adapting to contemporary storytelling techniques, blending awe, challenge, and moral exploration. Contemporary dragons also bridge cultures in ways ancient myths could only foreshadow. Films and games draw freely from Eastern and Western traditions, creating hybrid dragons that combine flowing grace, intelligence, fire-breathing power, and moral complexity. In this synthesis, dragons become universal symbols, recognizable and resonant across cultures while retaining narrative flexibility. A single dragon may reflect the harmony of a lung, the destructive might of a European worm, and the moral ambiguity of a Temeraire-style anti-hero, encapsulating the full spectrum of dragon mythology in one creature. In essence, modern dragons reflect the evolution of human imagination. They embody our fascination with power, morality, intelligence, and the unknown. They challenge us to confront fear and ambition, to consider ethical choices, and to recognize wisdom in forms beyond ourselves. They are companions, teachers, adversaries, and mirrors of the psyche, evolving in ways that remain faithful to their archetypal roots, while speaking directly to contemporary audiences. And as they continue to populate games, novels, and films, dragons prompt reflection not only on the narratives they inhabit, but on the audiences themselves. What does it mean to form a bond with a creature of unimaginable power? How do we navigate morality when confronted with intelligence beyond our own? And what does our fascination with dragons, our desire to ally with, confront, or learn from them, reveal about our values, fears, and aspirations as a species? Other dragons have become allies, reshaping traditional dynamics. In How to Train Your Dragon, Toothless represents loyalty, intelligence, and moral guidance. The relationship between dragon and human blurs lines of hierarchy and dependence. Here, dragons are not only partners in adventure, but embodiments of empathy, trust, and mutual growth. This reimagining reflects contemporary values: collaboration, respect for sentience, and recognition of intelligence beyond humanity. Dragons are no longer merely obstacles, they are co-creators in narrative and moral exploration, echoing their ancient role as teachers of cosmic order and balance, now reframed for modern audiences. Dragons, in the modern era, are mirrors not only of morality and challenge, but also of human imagination itself. They inhabit worlds shaped by creativity, digital technology, and storytelling innovation. Yet they carry forward the archetypal essence that has captivated humanity for millennia. In every wingbeat, every roar, and every coiled form, dragons remind us that imagination is both boundless and deeply rooted in cultural memory. In contemporary narratives, dragons embody the intersection of tradition and innovation. Video games allow players to forge unique relationships with dragons, shaping behavior, loyalty, and outcomes. Literature explores psychological depth and moral ambiguity, presenting dragons as sentient beings with complex motives. Films render dragons in breathtaking visual detail, transforming myth into a visceral, shared experience. Across these mediums, dragons are living canvases, reflecting the evolving concerns, values, and desires of the human mind. Creativity thrives in the presence of dragons. Artists, writers, game designers, and filmmakers draw upon centuries of myth while experimenting with new forms, functions, and symbolism. Dragons become vehicles for environmental reflection, psychological exploration, and social commentary. A dragon may embody climate change as a force of nature, the power of collective imagination, or the shadow of human greed. These reinterpretations highlight dragons' adaptability, demonstrating that myth can evolve to address contemporary challenges while retaining its core archetypal resonance. The future of dragons is, perhaps, the most fascinating aspect of their enduring mythology. As technology advances, through virtual reality, interactive storytelling, artificial intelligence, and global media, the possibilities for reimagining dragons expand exponentially. They may inhabit immersive worlds where audiences shape narrative outcomes. They may serve as symbols for human-technology interaction, ethical dilemmas, or global cultural synthesis. In every new form, dragons will continue to challenge, inspire, and reflect the human experience, ensuring that the myth remains alive, dynamic, and profoundly relevant. And so, as dragons soar through the digital skies, leap from the pages of novels, and shimmer on screens worldwide, we are left with a question as ancient as the myths themselves. What does the enduring fascination with dragons tell us about ourselves? What fears, desires, and aspirations are mirrored in their eyes, in their fire, in their coiled majesty? And as humanity continues to imagine, create, and explore, what new forms will dragons take? And what new lessons will they teach us in the centuries to come? Dragons are more than creatures of myth. They are reflections of our imagination, our values, and our deepest questions. They challenge us, inspire us, and remind us that the unknown is not to be conquered, but to be understood, respected, and celebrated. Now, the story turns to you. What do dragons mean to you? How do they inspire your imagination, reflect your challenges, or illuminate your values? Share your thoughts, your stories, and your visions, because dragons, as ever, thrive in the collective human imagination, coiling through memory, myth, and the limitless horizon of possibility. Modern dragons also speak to our collective need to explore the unknown. They inhabit realms of fantasy that push the limits of reality, yet they are always anchored in symbolic resonance. Fire-breathing wings evoke danger and ambition. Wise, flowing serpentine forms evoke guidance and harmony. In these dualities, dragons continue their ancient function, teaching courage, wisdom, and ethical discernment. Yet they do so in ways that resonate with contemporary audiences, who seek both wonder and intellectual engagement, both narrative immersion and personal reflection.